In order, it's 7:04. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. In the absence of our secretary, I will take a roll call for attendance. Trustee Church. Here. Trustee Jardine. Here. Trustee Zowdy.
Here.
Trustee Shaw is here. See anybody? Trustee Friedman. Here. Apologize. Okay, we also have John Kelly, Representative Anderson, Renee Grassi. We have Trustee Graziano on the phone. So at some point, we will have to take a vote to allow her to participate remotely. She's on her way here. Again, I think she's having a difficult childcare handout too. These 4-day weekends are not fun for parents. Not fun for parents, right? What's that? So I at this point entertain a motion to allow her to. Thank you, Trustee Church. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Mace. Okay, Jenny, hopefully you can hear us okay.
Yes, I can hear you, and my babysitter's here, so I'm on my way over.
Just a reminder, Jenny, your camera does need to be on.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, should we go to the pledge?
I'd like to invite everybody to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, the agenda came out on Sunday. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
I did have two quick notes. One was to amend the bylaws and policy committee membership that was in the agenda to reflect that Trustee Graziano is no longer on that committee. Thank you. And the second was just a typo, so an amendment on the fiscal year budget. It stated as fiscal year 2025 through 25. To make it say 25.
Thank you for catching those.
Thank you. All right, any other additions or corrections to the agenda for tonight?
Jenny, I don't see your camera on. So just wanting to.
It no longer has her name. Maybe start.
My camera's on, but I'm driving because my babysitter is.
Oh, I think I see you. You must be walking. Does she have audio?
I can hear you guys. I'm not on mute.
Well, as Eliza gets that going.
Yep. Continue.
Yes.
Right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board?
Anyone from Zoom? Is our audio working so that we could hear them if they were speaking?
Yeah, maybe Martha can just confirm that she can hear us.
Martha can hear us and she can hear Jenny, so I'm not totally sure.
She can hear
Jenny. Because we heard earlier. Martha, would you say something?
Sure. Sorry, I'm sick, so my voice is not great.
Hey, we hear you, Martha. Drink some tea, feel better.
Thank you.
So no one from Zoom.
Yeah, I can see
Yeah, I
Jenny.
see Jenny.
Yeah.
She's almost here. I see her.
Yeah, she's walking through the door. So we'll just give her a second to get here and get settled, rather than have we just start and then she can come in. All right, great. So as a way of kind of transition, as you all know, I had the opportunity to offer some comments and on PPRT as well as the general financial standing of the library and some of our building needs at a recent board meeting for the village trustees. And as you know, once we got done with the twice rescheduled January board meeting, IGA got signed. So as I've shared with you all at some of our other meetings, you know, I was very encouraged by the consistent comments from the village trustees about the importance of the library, how it's a core asset to our community, and the speed with which we were able to get the PPRT disbursements resolved. So Regis asked to also come here to share some of his thoughts with our library board. So please welcome our village president, Regis Charlotte. Regis. Thanks for being here.
So again, my name is Regis Charlotte, I'm village president of the village of Bluff.
Is the volume okay for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. That's fine.
Thank you. And so I believe in my sorry, I should take my notes on paper because otherwise I will forget once. So on behalf of the village, I would like to thank the library board for working with us to resolve this PPRT issue matter. I also want to take a moment to share with you all what Bonnie's presentation to the village board on Monday, January 8th, 2024 was illuminating. This PPR matter opened our eyes to issues of significant magnitude at this library, and that past practices and policies may not hold the answers for the future. I now understand that the Bluff Women's Club established the library in 1919, followed by in 1924 the village board of the village of Bluff formally recognizing by ordinance the creation of the library. While today having its own board, budget, and tax levy, the library is still considered a complement unit for the village of Bluff, therefore creating issues of where do we stand on a certain discourse of issue. We investigated some of the concerns cited by Bonnie. Some of his comments were striking. Specifically, we cannot find a stated limitation on holding a capital reserve or building a capital fund for the library. We know of safety issue for patrons, safety alarms with your HVAC systems, of course, and present bathroom ADA issues. To underscore this, I think you all know or should know that the village is paying for, among other items, the library annual comprehensive liability, public officials liability, property, boiler and machinery, crime and fidelity, sets of insurance policies. And as outlined by Renee and Pauline, the library board and Renee look forward to working with the village board on ideas, including but not limited to, number one, developing a separate IGA outlining village and library financial and organizational relationships. Number two, planning in cooperation for library capital needs. Number three, and finally, creating a schedule of annual state of the library presentation from the library for the village administrator and village board about the library impacts to the Bluff community. Your words. And I love it, by the way. Now to us, it is more than ideas. And as my fellow board of trustees and I studied at our committee of the whole meeting, these items must be pursued with a sense of urgency. I am happy to notice that you're ramping up a long-range planning effort. I can only commend this effort. I would stress crafting a comprehensive plan as an operational goals for short-term needs, maybe the next 3 months, tactical goals, for example, facility issues, maybe 1 year away, and strategic goals, maybe 3 to 5 years away, allows effort. Having last established a 5-year strategic plan in 2017, the village has been successful not by accident, but by rather careful planning. Finally, I would like to again convey the village board unwavering support for the library. He is a tremendous asset and treasure to our community. I have a sense that we all grew up in a library and maybe in this library. I believe that this PPRT event will help us, all of us, achieve transparency and accountability between village and library. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so perhaps it's an excellent segue for the presentation tonight from Ember Anderson, which is the reason we're in this unusual format tonight, right? We normally don't meet in this kind of layout for our meetings. But so that we can all see the screen, we're in a U shape today, so it's a little different. But I think we've shown we're a pretty flexible group. So thank you again, Regis. And we'll now turn the floor over to Sean Kelly to give us a summary of oh yeah, that's right. Jamie is gonna provide some opening comments about building and grounds. That's right. That's right.
I have been on the Building and Grounds Committee the entire time that I have served on the board, and this is 9 years now. So I feel like I've been watching this process unfold over a long period of time, because when I came on the board, we were involved with Ingrid Anderson at the time. We were looking into possibility of expanding. So our relationship with Ingrid Anderson goes back a long ways. Before I go into what Sean is going to address this evening, though, I just would like to offer some thanks to Renee. Because she's now survived through 2 Januaries with public library, and both Januaries have been exceedingly tough. And Renee, you have just done an incredible job to the point of putting your own well-being at risk to be here and doing what needed to be done while we were going through all sorts of issues that resulted in us having to close the library for several days. So I just want to acknowledge that was an amazing job that you did. So anyway, Sean is going to tell us a lot more about this than I will ever know, but I just want to mention that we've done studies of our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems in the library. We've also done a building and site facility assessment. We've done a facility assessment of the interior as far as accessibility and so forth, and a universal design assessment. So there is a lot to go over. Plus, we've had other subsidiary studies done, for instance, air quality, water quality, so on and so forth. So we have really been taking a deep dive that is long overdue into our physical structure. So with that in mind, Sean has lots and lots of great information for us. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
So I have a summary presentation when we go through. There is actually 3 reports that I'll be referencing here as we go through it. The first one we did in 2022 was a mechanical, electrical, plumbing report done through our engineering partners. That really focused only on those specific systems, fire protections, including plumbing. That was included. And then in 2023, we also included site. And so I've kind of wrapped those 2 together because all of them are really about your facility. If we go, the deliverables for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing included a spreadsheet. And the first slide of really the presentation is one of the summary pages from the spreadsheet. So what the spreadsheet did is it took all of your different systems, put them in the almost, it's a spreadsheet, but I'm going to use the word database. And then from that, it pulls information and organizes it by year. We do basically a 20-year look ahead. That's the average lifetime of most systems. Some are less, some are more, so 20 is a really good look. Also, we always recommend pretty much every 10 years to kind of take another look at the systems. A lot can happen in 10 years. If you don't look at something for 20 years, it's probably not a great idea. So if something is 20 years out, you want to periodically check it. So, with what the report does is it kind of organizes things, even for this, it's a 20-year look, but it organizes into 5-year chunks. So each kind of chunk of time can be thought of in a couple different ways. 5 years is a good planning period for several reasons. One is we're going to pick some life expectancy and we're going to make some estimates. So we could say your mechanical is a 20-year life cycle. It should be done by 2023, 24. But it could last a little bit longer. It could be a little bit shorter. So budgeting kind of an overall 5-year gives you some flexibility in when you want to actually do the project. You know, for example, doing HVAC equipment in the middle of winter is not usually advisable. So you want to pick those shoulder times of the year. So you have some flexibility with it. So I don't have a clicker.
I'm gonna be your clicker.
Okay, I would like to go forward. So this is a piece of the spreadsheet. So if you go into the spreadsheet file, you can start looking. This is the summary, but you can drill down. These are grouped into 5-year increments. We organize it overall into kind of priorities, and the priorities aren't just because they're 1 through 4. You get to set the priorities, but we usually put life safety first. Building envelope, which is actually something that's not included in what we did, but building envelope includes things like masonry and roof. One of the reasons it wasn't included was asked not be included, and also you just did your roof a little while ago, and you did tuxling in the building, so some of your exterior was actually done and has that kind of long lead time area. But
Both of those would still fall into the 20-year price.
it would, but no one reviewed it, so there's a zero out there. So there's no money put towards that, or in our report. Because we only reviewed basically mechanical. So all this is really is telling the mechanical, electrical, and functional. We do have a column called aesthetics. We put that as number 4. The building inside of it is a representation of you and the service you provide. So I'm not trying to say aesthetics aren't important. They are very important because they kind of are one of the things that people judge you on. So, but life safety is important.
Can I add a couple things, Sean?
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, when this project was scoped back in 2022, the board told Egbert Anderson not to include the roof or any masonry projects at that time. So this does not include anything like tuck pointing. It does not include windows, for example. All of those things that we've talked about in building grounds, and I know I talked to you a lot on the board. But this is just those main systems: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire suppressant systems.
So we do break them out by year on what we expect your investment to be in terms of maintaining the systems. Then we also average them, which is what you see in this bar column over here. So you see if you average it out, it's about $100,000 a year versus having to go all in at like $500,000. So it's just kind of giving you some opportunities on how to budget and how it can be flexible.
There's no option.
No, this is the only option we have. Would you rather light on then?
What does the group think?
So better.
This is better?
Better,
This is
probably
better?
for the video.
Okay. Well, we're sharing the screen, so that doesn't matter about the video.
Okay.
So there is a report that accompanies the spreadsheet. I just like to bring the spreadsheet out because it helps visualize the money better. The report goes into more of the why and how. So that it's kind of a 2-part job. If we go to the next slide, one of the things.
Sean, just one other thing I'd like to make sure people understand is that this spreadsheet cost estimate also does not include any of the accessibility recommendations.
Yeah, that wasn't, we did not, this is basically only the mechanical. So what I really want to do is kind of, what we usually do when we present this, like if this was back in 2022 when the project was done, we would kind of go through this, and then the next slide breaks out the 5-year plan, and that's really more, the next slide. Talks about, we kind of organize them, what, in 2022, we had a large, we identified several things that should have been done, and I know that you guys have been working on them as you've been going, but we then kind of tried to nail down, give you a visual representation of life safety versus the other areas with it. And then there's another one in 2024, which is basically, I'll look at mine, near-term system integrity. So I don't have the spreadsheet from me, so I can't actually give you specific items with there. Actually,
I can.
I have a slide from me.
Oh, perfect. Well, for example, when this project was done and they delivered the report, at that time, the recommendation was to replace one of the HVACs, and it was our oldest HVAC in the museum side in between our offices, because they said that at that time you had less than 5 years expectancy for that. And so just as Sean said earlier, it's an estimate. Sometimes you have more time, sometimes you have less time. And as we experienced just last month, we had less time than the 5 years. So a really good example of where that might have been a near term, but we experienced it in real life as a right now.
We can go to the next slide. What I did is I tried to pull out the report. So everything is itemized in the spreadsheet. But I tried to pull out a lot of the items and kind of talk through them that added up to that first 5-year number. It's I did pull out a few things that I thought were necessarily specific things we specifically need to address. But things like extending your fire protection system, doesn't cover your full building. At some point, it wasn't required, and that's kind of with the life of a building. As you do projects, certain things have to be done, and certain things can be grandfathered in. So at some point, when you did one of your projects here, it wasn't required to sprinkler areas that weren't sprinkled before. I'll tell you right now that it's not the case today.
And Lake Bluff has an ordinance that will go into effect in 2026 that it requires all areas. So this is an actual requirement for us specifically here in Lake Bluff. So this needs to be done to fulfill that ordinance coming up in 2026.
So Renee, you're saying that spaces will no longer be grandfathered?
Correct. Based on
Grandfathering is expired.
the fire sprinkling systems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Usually life safety systems, at some point, stop being grandfathered. So, just kind of understanding that. In terms of plumbing, they identified a lot of fixtures that were out, and that is actually some of the piping. So they did catch some of the piping. They weren't able to catch it all because some of it was. Yeah. So a lot of your piping is galvanized. Piping today is either some sort of flexible PVC plastic or copper. Those are really your only two options. That is because galvanized pipe is basically coated steel. Coatings don't last forever. Once the coating fails, the pipes start to rust basically from the inside out, and that rust can basically clog like arteries and will degrade your system over time. And then eventually you will get leaks that's over a long period of time. Your building is older, so that could be coming up. But that is what happens with, that's why we don't use galvanized.
You may remember when I first started, this sink experienced a huge clog and I needed Gary to fix it. And also the sink up in the staff area, there's a small sink there that also experienced some of this. So we're actually getting our water tested tomorrow to start with assessing if there are any particulates of concern in the water.
I understand that you replaced your hot water heater.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, a few things that were been checked on.
The backflow preventer is kind of a weird story, so I'll just quickly go through that. The civil report, which is down here, the site, found a backflow preventer on the outside of your building. My civil engineer said that can't be your building backflow preventer, it wouldn't be outside, that's not where you put those. That's probably like for a sprinkler system. Well, if you look into the mechanical, they looked all over the building, they could not find your backflow. And they note that in the, you have one, we can't find it though. It's probably on the outside of your building, that's why, because they didn't look up, they're on the inside, and that's where backflow preventers usually belong, it's on the inside of your building. Yours is on the outside. We can still keep looking, there might still be one in here. Your sprinkler system does need a backflow preventer, that is a real thing, so it still could be, I guess what we're saying is, that's weird, and we need to figure that out. For the mechanical, this is basically, you have a lot of different mechanical systems. The reason you have that is because you have a lot of different projects throughout the years. If you go into the room right next door to us, you'll see that it's very tight, it's very jam-packed. As you've expanded your building, you could not add into that room, which meant you had to create more remote mechanical rooms in the building, so you have a lot of different systems in the building. At some point, I'm not saying this is bad or good, but you have a lot of smaller systems that create a bigger system, which is why you have so many units.
We had our air tested yesterday and indoor air quality testing by a company called Energy Priority. And one of the things that he told me was usually your HVAC is just in one room. You don't have all these other systems in that room for code and recommendations. However, we have multiple systems in this room that he's referring to. Our hot water heater is right there. We have our alarm system, basically panel there. And it should be completely empty of nothing but the HVAC, but that is not how our setup is. So I'm learning things every day.
And then show me building automation software. Is that the panel that tells us in the 12 different zones in the building what the temperatures are?
It is, yes. The building automation system is the brain that kind of controls the different zones. Though this is a very common one, this is absolutely, these systems get installed. It is very costly to keep updating them every year, just like every software. Every year there's a new version. This is still kind of software which isn't really on a subscription base, which is now basically all software. So you buy it once, but at some point it needs to be updated to just function properly. So you can put that up. This is not unusual, so I don't want.
And to clarify, it only manages one HVAC. The other three are not on Delta controls. The one HVAC that's on the automated software is the one that manages the library. But the other three, including the one that just malfunctioned, are not on Delta control. So their recommendation is to eventually have all of your systems be on an automated system. But right now we only have one.
The last one, LED lights, that's not. This would not be like a critical item. It's something that you can do. You can actually see some level of savings from it. Your lighting is. Lighting systems contribute to somewhere around 20% for typical buildings of your electrical use. They're not as high as when we think they are. So if you're saving 10%, you're saving 10%. It's not as huge of a savings as you would like it to be, as I think people expect it to be, but it still saves you money.
The concern though is that most of our building is fluorescent. And according to the EPA, they are not going to be stocking fluorescents in this country starting in a year or two.
They've already discontinued some. I don't know.
And Gary, our maintenance person, has had huge issues trying to find lighting that actually fits within. That's why we had to convert this room to LED when we paid for that to happen, because these lights were malfunctioning in a way that was unsafe. But this may not be at some point an aesthetic issue. It might be an issue of supply.
The other thing that this will trigger is once you start replacing the quantity of lights that you're at, is you'll have to bring it into energy code, which requires controls. So you have to have automated occupancy sensors, and you have to have a system that actually turns your lights off at night as a public building. Like instead of walking around and hitting switches, it just has to go on.
And, Sean, that's only for interior LED fixtures at
That's
cost
correct.
estimate.
That is not an exterior. And then I wanted to pull out some highlights of the site, which included, things. These are things that could be grandfathered or we just left because they were no longer part of, for example, we have some areas on your site which don't extend the proper accessibility requirement. They could have been installed at a time when that wasn't required. Also, some of the entries that they go to aren't really entries anymore. So, but this is something that should be looked at. There are over time concrete moves, sites move, everything moves, pavers move. You built a lot of the flat work, the paving on your site is moved and is no longer in compliance. And then I put the backflow preventer back out there to figure out what that is. So we found a backflow preventer. We think it's either way we should cover it. No one should have access to turn on and off your backflow preventer. Even if it is for landscaping, only you should be able to do that. Right now, it's just available. So these are kind of like the high level things that I pulled out of the site and the report. If you, the report is available, the written report. The written report is intended, and I'll stress this not to be used with the spreadsheet. Those documents really are put together. So because the report has no numbers, all the numbers are.
And you all have copies of those both digitally and on the Google Drive for our board retreat for this Saturday.
So do we have 3 or 4 gas furnaces?
We have 4 HVAC. They're not all furnaces individually. Some are combined units. We have 4 systems.
And so is one not approaching end of life within the next 5 years? So we're
This furnace, I believe, was recently
I think it was within 10.
it was recently, there's one that's much further up.
okay.
And I think it's this one because I know that you had some work done on this in the last 5 years at least.
And what's the end of life assumption for a furnace?
Typically 20 years if maintained properly.
So
A lot of our clients go about 25. Again, that's what making sure you change out your filters, you keep up on small repairs. Sometimes it's just a fan will go out or a compressor will go out. It's not fully.
And our package with Midwest Mechanical covers all of that for all 4 systems, just to clarify.
And that's what I was gonna drive it ultimately. So if we have to replace 3 of these in the near future and one's halfway through its useful life. Do we need to maintain 4 systems or is there an efficiency to have, do we have the option to combine systems?
Can this building sustain 1 or
I wouldn't think without some sort of significant renovation, we would have to be combining ductwork and creating possibly a larger room. I think the spaces that they're all in, my understanding is that it's not very large.
one is a closet on the 2nd floor in the museum area, which is very hard to get through. It's not even 36 inches down that corridor. The one on the 2nd floor in that closet, and there's no space for it around it either.
So buildings we find with multiple mechanical groups like this, you're not alone in this kind of approach to additions or renovations. The challenge becomes having to reduct everything. And yes, you would, over time, it is less expensive to maintain probably 2 larger units. I think the cost to actually redo all of the ductwork would be prohibitive or want to be part of a bigger project.
And so Sean, the spreadsheet was a 20-year look of just mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. This is really like a 2-year focus, some of which we have addressed. Right?
It's
So this is like
5 years.
This is 5, okay, 22 it says 22 to 26 at the top, so I guess
Oh,
that is
sorry.
4 or 5, yes.
It is intended to
Mentally,
be,
I was thinking it was 2,
it's intended to be 5 year, sometimes the dates have changed.
yeah,
You were 5 inclusive.
yes.
But again, do you want to talk about the site? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There
No.
are no costs associated with that.
Yeah, one of the problems with the site is we probably have to itemize all, so I'll pick these. Your building's entry used to be On the west side,
West.
west side. West side of the building. So when that entry was decommissioned, but it was kept as an emergency exit. Emergency exits need a accessible ramp. However, because it's not a main entry, there wasn't a lot of attention paid to that. The ramp is no longer in compliance, it's actually pulling away from the building. It's a hazard. If you had an emergency, the majority of the population would be fine. Small section would not be using that door, and it's just not in compliance. Things move, that's just the way it is, but. So we could pull that out as a separate project, but generally it's better to do. When you're doing flat work, the more you do, the better the cost. Because it's gonna, you have to mobilize people, you've got to buy it all, the more bulk, the more you can do, the better.
Right, you're disrupting operations, so if you can get it all done.
Right.
do that. And the system's cost estimate for 5 years is $500,000. I just eyeballing it real quick, it's like it's about $500,000.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the entryway, concrete specifically, the ramp, that's not code compliant?
So a lot of the sites were visually, one of the recommendations from the site report was to get. This would be another expense, but get a survey done to find out if some of these things, so we eyeballed a lot of it, we don't believe it's in compliance, you have a certain. Slope that you have to hit, also. Typically with the slopes that we do see out there, you need a handrail, which you don't have.
And this is for the entryway in the front of the library, that we've gotten recommendations to add handrails from our friends, from museum staff, so that's what he's talking about.
Right, so that area altogether is not compliant, but there's ways it could be compliant. We could either look at kind of flat work, which is, or concrete work, which is expensive, we can look at putting handrail on. There's a lot of different options. We wouldn't know if the ramp is, all of it is out of compliance without a survey. Look, we'd have to get a point, like a topographic survey, and start looking at all the points. The site review is a visual review of it, so. There are some notes in there where it says this appears to be out of compliance. If it appears to be out of compliance, it most likely is, but we would need to confirm with the. There are other, I mean, go through, I just tried to pull out a snapshot. It's not really focused on the 20-year, but really more than 5.
And the price estimates included some level of inflation anticipated, right?
So the spreadsheet does escalate at 4% per year. I think, well, it's a number you can enter, so you put the number at the top and it starts escalating all over. So these numbers should include 5 years of. It would include, if we go back one slide. Sorry. This would have 0 escalation. This would have 2 years of escalation. So 26 is not calculated. So if you did it in 26, we would have to change the number of the spreadsheet and it would escalate it to the year you do it. But right now it's assuming you're doing it in 20. Does that make sense?
It's 4% a year.
4%. That's a. Like it's common.
It's a
You can't, well.
For COVID, construction costs went a lot.
The average escalation is between 7 and 8% across the board. 8 mechanical got to 30. Some things were less, but the average, if you move COVID, is 4. So that's why we still use it. Any other questions on the first 2 reports? We can go into the accessibility in the second report. We can skip the slide. So I did want to quickly kind of try to give you a difference between this is one report that addresses 2 different things. One is accessibility and one is universal design. Those are different, they're related. Accessibility is a code. So this is a federal and state mandated code with a bunch of requirements that you can measure really easily. Is that code compliant? Yes or no? There's not really a lot of gray area here. Universal design is intended to design to as many people as possible. This is more of a, we understand not everything can be accessible to everyone, but that we need to try our hardest to make things as accessible as possible.
Can I give an example?
Yes.
It's the same example I gave the committee. So a great example of accessibility code is the curb cuts that you see on the streets that came out of the ADA law that was put into federal law by former President George Bush. And that benefited people who use wheelchairs. However, people who use strollers and push them around, people who are pushing their luggage, people carrying boxes, people with physical disabilities, or maybe they can't walk as easily, multiple groups benefited from curb cuts, even though the code was specifically for people who use wheelchairs. And so universal design tries to incorporate as many audiences and groups as possible. So the parents or caregivers that push strollers, you know, the older adult in the community that walks with a cane. So it really is more encompassing, and there's a lot more flexibility in design. So this really helps us assess two of those things. Code compliance from, you know, just the law standpoint, and also how is our space used by our community, and is it effective?
So we want to make sure that that as a, you know, major public building within the community, that your services are accessible to the majority of your community residents. We also want to make sure that we're following all the rules and regulations in the industry. So this is, it looks at both. So the first kind of area, what I did is I pulled out, we kind of, working with Renee, we kind of categorized these as well. There's some, kind of short-term things that can be done, some midterm, some long-term things. And I did mix a few in here, so this isn't all short-term. I also started including things that I think are very critical for services to the community. They may have fallen into mid or long-term, and mainly that's because the disruption and expense is going to be significant. Short-term stuff is usually things that are easier to do. Some might be no cost, some might be very low cost. So what is the main entry? Coming up to your building. This is your old entry. This is the previous entry to the building. This is the entry. This is your current entry. There is a bit of confusion around for any new people where you enter your building. Your signage and just the presentation of the building showcases this as your entry. So how do we make it easier for people to know where the building is? This is tucked away, it's in shadow. In a bright day, you actually can't see into that area. And there's a sign here below, but there's a sign here, there's a sign at your corner. It's really not a clear entry into the building. And also the sidewalks in this area are starting to heave, and you have some, that's more of an ADA issue. I think the universal design issue is confusion on your entry. This also has a very wide sidewalk, which is not required. So there's things that can be done. This has to be done anyways. Looking at, because this is the building plan, this is one of the emergency exits I talked about before. Sorry. But basically changing this into something that is less inviting, because it's not your entry, and trying to push people more towards where your entry is. We just also alluded to, you have a really nice looking sign at your corner, which kind of indicates this is where you come into your building, this is your front door. I'm not saying this sign is any less nice, but it feels hidden. It's not easily identifiable as the main entry compared to your monument sign over there. This is more of a flag sign. I think it helps. It absolutely helps people understand where the entry is, but you have a lot of signals that point towards this corner.
And Jamie, can you remind us when the village opted to address signage in the whole town, the library board opted to keep this signage?
Correct. We liked the sign we had, so we chose not to.
Okay, so just more context for the newer board members that there was a previous reason to keep it, just in context of this conversation.
It's a mess. I think, but overall, it might get a little bit. So that, is again, more a universal approach to design. These are kind of the easier things to do. The next one, talks about the ramp that you brought on before. So these are highlighting things within the site that are amenities that are not fully accessible. So this ramp did not appear to have the slope that is, that would be, you can have a slope with handrails. So if you put handrails on here, this most likely could be code compliant. There is a slope that doesn't need handrails, and we think this exceeds that.
Sean, I thought there was also something about Turner, or the amount of slope that is currently that the ramp currently covers would actually require a flat area as like a turnaround area.
Every 30 inches of rise, you have to have a landing for a ramp. So that's a kind of it's a rest.
Right.
You're pretty close. I didn't measure outside, but you're gonna be very close to. So I think you're more than 30 inches, so you would need a rest spot, most likely at the midpoint.
So adding handrail alone
Would not.
solve the compliance, code compliance issue with this ramp.
Correct.
Okay.
Then, again, this entry, it's, not level and it's pulling away from the building. Other areas on the site, so pavers and flagstone are beautiful. They take maintenance. They become out of alignment very quickly. They become tripping hazards and they become problematic for people with any sort of, not with wheelchair mobility, but other mobility disabilities. So, you have some on the site. This space in particular over here has a lot of out of alignment stones. Flagstone is notoriously hard to keep level. It looks beautiful. I'm not here to tell you you have a beautiful building, but that should be looked at because it is. You have a lot of tripping hazards in that area. That would be that could be dangerous for certain people with mobility issues.
And one of the things we talked about in the building and grounds committee was, and we'll cover this in the demographics at the end, there are two major groups of Lake Bluff residents. Families with young children and older adults who are retired. And the older you are, the more likely you have experience of a disability. Most prevalent disabilities being physical, impacting mobility. And so access in our community is so important. And so I think it's both an aesthetic aspect and an accessibility aspect too.
A couple other issues on your site that I want to point out is you have, you worked up at your entry and then you have one off the road. The one on the road is not clearly signed, so I'm not sure. I think people who know about it are happy. I think people who don't know about it would never know about it until someone told them. It's hidden, it's behind the pole there.
And over the years, 2 cars have hit it, separate situations. The book drop on the street has caused accidents where cars have actually hit it and we needed to have it replaced.
I don't know if the weeds that drop caused the accident.
No, I misspoke.
Okay.
But I do think the visibility of it and potentially, as to Sean's point,
Yeah.
there's an issue there. And so the recommendation would be to impact signage.
And then your bike parking, right now in the bike parking would block a lot of seating in the plaza there. You have some bike parking around the side of the building over here, which is, I think, not in service currently. But I was told that you have a very active biking community, probably not right now, but in other months. So making sure that's clear and available for patrons.
We also just talked about stroller parking as well.
Yes, and I might have something about that.
I think,
Yeah, it's the
We can talk about that possibly in the next slide, because we have images to help people out. This is something that I didn't witness, basically because I'm probably coming to the library we have less young people here. But at your main entry, and I think the next slide. Yes. When people come in this door, they leave strollers within here, which blocks egress, blocks the area, because this is the main way to go. That's supposed to be an elevator. It's two. When people go down to the elevator, go downstairs to the children, they leave the strollers up here. Kind of block the area. So-
They leave them outside the door, they leave them in the vestibule by the museum side, Kathy is nodding. They leave them right by the elevator, I see it all the time since my office is there.
At the top of the ramp, blocking the
Yes.
ramp, sort of.
Yes.
You know, it's, yeah.
Yes,
It's a bit of a nuisance and.
but it tells you there's something off with the design, if people are trying to use it in a certain way and the design doesn't support it, there's an issue there.
I think when people come in the building that don't know it, you also have a little bit of a disconnect in terms of your security. You can go downstairs and you can leave downstairs without actually going past any service. So you can enter the library in your own vestibule, you can get to the elevator, you can go downstairs, you can enter the children's department. And at that point, unless Renee's in her office, no one's home.
And you can exit out of the emergency exit, which goes to the east side of the building and right next door.
So I know why they put the elevator. It's so that it can sit, but elevators are very expensive. It serves the museum and it serves the library. But currently how the building's arranged, you have a bit of a security disconnect. You can also make it up to the mezzanine and kind of in and out of the building. So if you went into the building, go up to the mezzanine, you can actually exit the building without having any staff or people knowing that you were even in the building. Even without the monitor. Unless the monitor's in your office, maybe you might be seeing. Because it goes right past, I don't think you can see it, you go right past your office, but that's really your only security measure to your elevator.
Well, and just as many of you will recall, the director's office used to be oriented differently with the desk, so no one would have seen.
I moved my desk so that I could see that.
There's, this kind of gets into a few different things, wayfinding the signage. So when you come into the building, you come into both museum and the library. They do have different hours. I think it's not necessarily the clearest way that works. You can come into the library, but if you need accessibility, that's not well signed, you have to go back out to the left and get down, get up. A lot of the spaces in the building don't have the code required signage on the restrooms or the stairs or the egress. Those are all critical, like safety. The accessibility code does want you to sign all public spaces and within reason, staff spaces. Big closet, they're not really sign closet, but you don't have any of the code compliant signage. Required accessibility.
And that's why we applied for the $50,000 grant from the state library for funding that would help us potentially remediate all of the signage.
This, we don't necessarily have a great image, but when you come in through this door, a lot of buildings in your buildings. What you want a building to be is intuitive. You don't want signs telling you. You want to just come in and know where you are, right? Or know how to get there, or have a reasonable expectation of how things work. A couple of quick things that you could do that don't really customize. When you come in, you've actually hidden your staircase. And you can kind of, if you would rearrange a little bit of the stacks, make that people kind of clearly understand, okay, that's how I get to the mezzanine, that's how I can get downstairs to the chief's department. So I think there's a few things you can do to just make the building a little bit more intuitive without having to worry about adding signage. I am a zero signage person. I want you to just come and understand, like, this is where I go. I know that's not realistic, we have to have signs, but the least amount of signage is helpful. We actually did a really fun study, and if I can find the video, I'll send it to you. This was at the Winnetka Northfield Local Library. We gave people cameras. And they video of their library, and then we gave a few of them tasks, which was go find a book. So they found a call number. they went to where they're supposed to in the library and we put a sign up that said this book isn't here. The specific book they were looking for. Oh, I think maybe one person saw the sign.
Nobody reads signs.
No one read the sign. So they looked and looked and looked for like 5 minutes and you can see it in the thing, like looking all over, and in the camera, you can see the sign that says the book's not here, but no one saw it. So signage, it's good, it's gotta be strategic, so I'm not sitting here telling you that signs everywhere. I really do think they need to be very effective when you do signage. So the next slide talks about, this is collections in general, but I can talk about how, the accessibility has guidelines about how, what reading radiuses are and how people need to navigate things. This comes exactly out of the Illinois Accessibility Code diagrams. Not every one of your stacks is oriented so people can do this. This is, again, things where it's not, it takes time and effort, but shifting the collections a little bit would solve all of these issues. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it is something that can be done at a very low cost and cost. And there's also people out there that can do it really quickly for reasons.
But Sean, can you just point out what space represents the shelving for the books?
It would be anything in the center.
Yeah.
So as you go down an aisle, if it has 42 inches wide, you get a 48-inch turning radius. If your stacks are only 36 inches wide or 36 inches space, you have to have a 5-foot turning radius. So there's options in here. So not everything has to be the 60-inch. But if you want space for this collections closer together, you just need more room.
Are you gonna talk about the eye level shelving? Presented face out at eye level.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that we've been, sorry, I was looking at mom. We've done this on a lot of different places, which is to replace kind of that eye level shelf with as much face out as possible. And we see people actually getting pulled down aisles and actually browsing the collection a lot more. It's a very easy thing to do, very simple, and the effectiveness. What we typically ask a library to do is to pick a series of shelves and do it on it. Just watch what happens.
It's bookstore marketing, but I mostly meant the eye level piece. The idea that a lot of our shelving is way too tall.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was
yeah.
gonna say also below, way too low.
Right. So there is a code requirement that 50% of all of your collections need to be accessible. Your youth collections probably allow you to be within that. But if you start taking your collections and organizing them to adult, like total for the library, probably. But you have to be within a certain reach of a wheelchair, anything outside of that. So actually the lower shelf doesn't count. It's outside the reach zone. It's 18 inches up. And then anything above 48 inches is considered outside the reach zone. So the majority of your adult collections, because you have 7 shelves, does not, anything with 7 shelves doesn't count. Anything with 6 does. But all of your youth basically brings you all over. That's more of a, there is an accessibility code requirement, and then there's a universal design requirement is the 90-inch shelving is the top shelf.
Impossible.
Most people can't reach that.
That's why we've started not shelving on some of the lower levels of the library. You may have noticed it. And we've constantly been talking about weeding and looking at size of our collections and how we can navigate that within our current building and shelving furniture equipment. But we shelve on every shelf. And so the size of the collections, given this code, will need to be reduced if nothing changes. So just wanted to share that perspective from a operational standpoint.
Moving through the library, this is again some easy stuff to do. So you've got to keep your doorways clear. These present all the options that people have to get through a door. A lot of your doors are great. A lot of them not. So you need to make sure you have the proper width. This is not only for public, this is for staff too. So anytime that you're breaking one of these specific accessibility rules, you're opening yourself up to let's say unhappy and also possibly legal matters. So just keeping the doorways clear is an easy one, because you have nothing here too bad. Except for one area.
Except for
One area, but the rest is, you just gotta make sure you keep it clear. I'd say specifically in public areas, and if you can, in centers.
this room is a problem.
The cat room is
Oh, thank you, good, but the other space you were referencing,
janitor closet, maintenance and mechanical spaces are,
but the one example, they're gonna wonder what that one is.
Yeah, what's the one?
it's the drinking fountain over here next to the. You can't, the
Restroom.
drinking fountain makes the bathroom accessible.
So when the drinking fountain was installed here outside the children's bathroom, or the bathroom in the children's area, there was only one side to install it on, because the other side is a wall, and the door only opens in one way. Sean found this and we talked right away, and he said, this water fountain needs to move in order to be code compliant. The door, you need the swing radius, so whoever installed wasn't taking code into consideration.
Yeah, it would be this one right here.
Yeah.
I know why they put it there. They put it there because the water's there.
Water's
But it basically made that bathroom, not accessible. Talking about bathrooms, so this is, the next slide. goes into it. This is one that I put into kind of a long-term to mid-term. This is probably the most critical issue that we can talk about tonight, so I'm open for any questions you have. This is the smallest possible restroom that you can do for code. None of your facilities need this. You have no code in bathrooms. You have bathrooms that could be code compliant, I think with a reasonable amount of work, but this is plumbing and a lot of your walls are CMU. This is the biggest challenge that we found in the report.
Sorry, Chuck, you say that again, some of your walls.
Some of your walls are concrete walls.
Concrete, yeah.
So, yeah,
Clearly.
knocking them down is harder to do. Some of them, I don't believe they're all low bearing. Some of them are. So we've got structural issues, you've got spatial issues. So some of the things that if you did any project expanding, this would be called out immediately, like fire protection. You would have to bring these new. You have a certain distance. The sink needs to be away from the toilet. None of your bathrooms have the proper distance. That's someone with a wheelchair can come up, actually use the grab bars to transfer themselves over to the toilet. There's a turning radius required so that you can actually turn a wheelchair on. Almost all of these are related to wheelchair. It's accessibility codes, having wheelchair use. And then there's just, it's really the turning radius, the access to the toilet and the space.
We don't have all the grab bars either. We have one grab bar, but we don't have the vertical grab bar. Do you want to talk about the plumbing implications of having to move the sink?
So if we have to redo a lot of the elements, it makes sense to do fixtures at the same time, so you're not redoing work. But most of the locations have a concrete wall next to them, so making them any wider require moving around walls, which is always an expense. So this is the one that will cost most likely the most. It is a real investment.
And what is the code, what is the ADA code, how many bathrooms in the building would need to meet ADA?
So every single use restroom.
And our whole building is single-use restrooms.
So you only get an exception if you have a multi-use restroom. In a multi-use restroom, you'll need one.
Is there a minimum number of restrooms per square footage in a building like this?
Yes, I would assume. So the Illinois plumbing code is not kind to libraries. I would assume you do not have enough. But that's a calculation we'd have to do. The rule of thumb is you take the full library square footage of about 50. And then we have to put it into a table that is not intuitive at all. And that's like how many restrooms. So we have to figure out how many people are in the building and the number of people tell you we have bathrooms. The reason that the plumbing code is not kind to libraries is, we fall under a section of the code that the Illinois plumbing marshal, this person, has ruled what we are, and it's a lot.
We're a public building, so we are supposed to be free and open. I can't tell you how many people come into the vestibule, they look at that first restroom and they see it's locked, they can't get in. Because even though it says there's a sign to ask for the key at the front door, at the front desk, they just leave the building. I see it all the time outside my office, and it happens all the time.
I believe you have. So 2, 3 on the first level. Get one, can't remember, get one on the same.
There's 6 bathrooms.
Well, what was your question? Sorry.
I was trying to count how many.
6.
We have 6 total.
6.
Questions about the restrooms?
That's gonna be close. Shouldn't be many more than 6, but it's gonna be close. It would depend on how many times.
We also did put this in our
Yeah,
grant application.
some funding, some.
Right. One of the other areas that I wanted to point out, and I brought this in, was the kind of the staff workspace. So the staff workspaces, the director's office are not together, not that they have to be together, but they're very remote from each other. So it's almost like the director's not in the buildings. Well, and then the staff workroom, is, I would say, really tight for the number of people that you have. A good rule of thumb is between 150 to 200 square feet per person. I think that you're exceeding that in that room. I did do the calculation, I don't remember it though. But
It was, I remember the report, it was 4 people and the office was designed to fit 4 people and we routinely had 7 to 8 in there.
so, just bringing this up, there's, we work on a lot, we do a lot of, Member Anderson. One of our main things we do, we know a lot about them. We do a lot of library design and understanding like space needs and storage. I think that you're really taking a lot, we do like to sacrifice a lot of staff space for the public, or public entity, we like to give back to the community, but I do wanted to bring up that I think that this is overworked.
Is it accurate to say also full of code compliance issues?
Yeah, you do need, you need to be able to do the same kind of turning radiuses, getting in and out. All of your sinks in your building are too high. They have to be lower. This room has a sink. So there, it does, I mean, here's one, the copier's here because that's where it fits. But that's blocking the door. As long as the door stays open, it's okay, but if you ever close the door, it's not.
Height of workstations too, there was a counter.
Yeah, the counters exceeds the accessibility.
And again, I just want to make sure it's stuff. None of the countertops and sinks are code compliant.
99%, yeah. It doesn't mean you can't have it out of compliant. You
Can't have it out of compliant, what
can have it out of compliant counter.
counter, okay.
You just can't have any out of compliant counter sinks. Sinks,
Gotcha,
so anything with a sink has to be at 34 inches. There's no
right. So we have, I think, 3 sinks,
3 sinks, they're all two.
yeah, but like not in the bathrooms, sink,
Right,
kitchen type area.
Regular sinks, like your break room, your services and your staff room. You can have a counter that is higher, as long as you have a counter that is
Also lower.
low, so that would be okay.
Yeah.
But no counter with a sink in it is allowed to be over 50.
We also have our sink in the mechanical room, but that's not the same.
Right, that's,
Yeah, that's
mechanical is the exception.
not.
And then I was getting towards the end of it, we brought in some other systems, such as just the layout of the library. And this is actually talked about in a different section, but I condensed it down a little bit. All 3 of your floors connect. This causes problems with your HVAC system, it causes a lot of problems with noise. It's probably not affecting air quality so much, but you can hear, it's very disruptive, you can hear kind of conversations across the board. Mechanical systems are having trouble kind of keeping all 3 levels at a consistent temperature. So there are acoustic solutions, but acoustic, there's no soundproofing. We can make improvements, but we never solve the issue. The other thing that we thought would be very could be helpful would be a paging system. You don't have a paging system right now that I'm aware of. I didn't see, so it's not a requirement, but it is one of those things that helps. You can make an announcement for closing, you can make an announcement for emergencies, you can make announcements for programs. The other thing that those things can be is they could also add some white noise or some pink noise to the building that might help. To fight noise, sometimes you do fight fire with fire. A quieter building can sometimes cause more problems than just adding the level of kind of like raising the average noise temperature up a little, or sound level up a little bit, helps kind of mask other things.
And so just to reiterate, the grant that we are receiving from the state, $100,000 for capital improvement. One of the projects is for the paging system, and we've already met, Martha and I, with CBI, so that we can move this forward before the deadline, so. Acting on this right away.
And then there's some, as we were walking through, we saw some of the floors, and then several of the materials kind of delaminating. This happens over time, materials don't last forever.
I will add, though, that I had a meeting with our architects from the 2010 remodel, and they had not been here since that remodel. They were surprised / shocked at the delamination in our carpet, and they recommended a carpet company for me to work with to address some of those tiles that are coming up, causing tripping hazards. And so that is another big project that I'm coming up to do that for the whole building and replace the carpet where it needs to be replaced. By Eliza's desk, it's completely torn up, and then some of these tiles will have to be replaced by the staff area as well.
Well, one of the other things we did as part of the accessibility and universal design is we did a demographics report, full report, it's just pages is available for you to go through. It's the demographics reports are always really fun to go through and another nice. There's snapshots on, I believe this one is from 2020, but it talks through kind of how the breakdown of like Bluff, and it is very. It doesn't tell, like I should say, it doesn't tell a complete picture, but it does fun facts to go through and understand. One of the things we didn't know, based on the language, which is on here, it does, I mean, this talks about your age, race, total kind of population, household.
The next slide is English.
The next slide talks about language. So one of the things we like to look at is when we're talking about signage, it should be look at multiple language signs, and it didn't really seem to jump out here. We could go one more slide forward. with almost a 90% emotional was probably not advisable at this time, but some communities it is. But yeah, full demographic report is available.
So Sean, what would you recommend as next steps? Before the meeting started, thanks, Vanessa. Before the meeting started, you had said that, you know, the work that's been completed thus far is usually part of a larger piece of work that is more comprehensive. So we know we have a few pieces missing.
So a lot of these initial reports that we do, like building assessments, accessibility reports, universal design, come with like a master plan report, which can be again thought of as a 5, 10, 20-year report, but it starts organizing goals for the library, as well as not only for like services, but also for kind of spaces. So if we take the example of fire protection, we, you know, the master plan would say we have a goal of 5 years. Here's what we're going to do, and then it starts getting into like planning out where it is. So it brings the planning to a next stage, not so much as we want to do it with the next 10 years, but how are we going to do it in the next years? It gets more. Every layer is kind of a layer of refinement, closer, better estimates. I mean, there's no one went through and picked out on calculating a catalog and said, this is what we do. This is the average cost of the camp. That's kind of what we do. When every layer brings a refinement level. So a master plan is a typical, either they're done together or a next step. It helps you kind of organize what are the best things you can do, are where the bathrooms sit. So bathroom is going to affect a lot more than just, and that's kind of why what a master plan does is helps you see all the different things you need to do and try to get a cohesive vision. A lot of we've come into several projects where they're attacking things, and they're like, you know, stopping the water in the dam, but you're not taking like the big overview step back to make sure that everything is aligning towards, you know, fixing the dam.
And what's a typical time frame to go from where we are today to a more comprehensive look?
Well, I feel, so we've done a few of them for you throughout the years. I think they were all focused on the bigger picture of, do we expand? Or we did want to renovate your children's department. So we've looked at different ones. The timeframes to really get those done is like 3 to 4 months. We like to, my firm I know, and I would assume, well, my competition doesn't do that at all, but we like a very collaborative kind of work. We want to sit down with you, we want to understand your needs. It's not us telling you.
It's an
us
intensive
listening.
process.
Yeah.
With staff and, I would also say board, some level of board, depending on every library is different.
Yeah.
What the board's role is in some of that master planning.
But I think it's you definitely need enough time for people to give you their feedback on it. So it should be a master plan that everyone is buying in and not.
Absolutely.
So and then there's usually you get another more specific estimate that kind of talks through either the whole project, or I can give you, for a couple libraries, what we've been doing is breaking it down into 5, kind of a series of 5 projects that can happen over, let's say 10 years. Like we want to address the bathrooms because we know that's a problem. So we're going to make that priority 1. We're going to find out all the other things that are adjacent to that make sense to do with priority 1. But we also know that we only have this much money that we're willing to invest, and not willing, but can invest in this project. So priority 2 might be, we need to address, medium services. We want to expand the ability to provide programming, something. This would be, I'm making these up. These need to come from you, not me. But that's, we kind of then organize them and provide costs for each of them, usually a cost to do everything or a cost to kind of pick and choose.
Questions for Sean?
Everyone's time, any questions? It's great when it's not just me up here talking the whole time. I appreciate that.
I told you they would be engaged, I knew they would. Well, thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So you, as Renee mentioned, all of the reports from Engberg Anderson that are relevant on the Google Drive. Please familiarize yourself with them before we get to our board retreat on Saturday. It's fine. All right,
Johnny,
thank you. Great, good to see you. So that takes us to our next agenda item, approval of board minutes from January 2024. The infamous twice rescheduled board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the board.
Thank you, trustee Georgine. There a second?
thank you so much. Bye,
Thank you.
Rita.
Bye-bye. Okay, second by trustee Zowdy. But this will be a roll call vote. Approving minutes.
Trustee Shaw,
I abstain, I was not here.
trustee Church,
Aye.
trustee Graziano. Aye. I think I was absent, sorry. Trustee Dirty.
Aye.
Trustee Dowdy. Trustee Friedman, I think trustee Dowdy, you may also need to abstain.
Abstain. So I can't second that either, can I?
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and trustee Hayes was present, although he is absent today. So we only have two. Trustee voting aye.
So I guess we
It's
vote on
not-
that next month.
Yes.
Because they were abstentions, not nays.
Oh, then next month.
Next month.
Okay, next month. And Renee suggested we take a 5-minute recess.
Just to stand and give yourself a little bit of a break.
What time has it got to be? 8:30. Wow. So no, so reconvene at 8:32. Or less if everybody's back.
Movement break, as we call it,
Yes.
story time in school.
We have to like do the motion.
You could.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Put your leg in. Fine, I do have to leave, right around nine.
If there's anything you want to rearrange, please let me know.
We could do budget. We could do budget. Next.
Is budget next?
No, we could do is what I.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can someone move that we not do committee reports because we have so many action items coming from the committees? And because of the board retreat. So what do you think, Fran?
Give me a second.
See your guys' cozy one? It is in person. I dialed into CNN that evening and saw such a speech. So it's just really not against what I thought.
They went to South.
Yeah, I was out of the country for most like. Where were you? It's about design. And it's my fault. But I heard, I did think it was interesting. It's actually a factor. You can see that in the
there.
It's in Florida last week. My parents live there. I'm sorry, I was in Florida. It's actually, they have both the house right in Sanctuary's fine. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, they're 260.
Oh,
There was so many.
oh.
Yes, we're still.
And then you say, oh, it's really like,
It's not that she's really.
It's like, I need to see.
so you're doing great now.
What's there?
Yeah.
So, we were,
It's
not used to that, I walk in, and then. He just, well, I assume he's gonna ask for more.
Okay.
I think it's stuff for 2 years.
If she,
Yeah.
and then we got to, we fill out.
Exactly, and then I put a couple of.
She has.
My husband was like. I'm not sure if they tell me when I was. Well, they talked about it. I'm so glad that, yeah. It's like, oh, that's really.
He was very,
Right, I think that's the. Yeah, I didn't want it there. No, we're not, just not necessarily like. Yeah, it's great.
And you know, so much of we say.
We're lost.
Everyone's all the harmony.
I know. It's not like that's dealing with all the places sitting on
Yeah.
It's easy to get there, like flying at airport. There,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's easy, everything, you know, educated. Yeah.
I knew,
Well,
I knew it was.
yeah, I know, it's been really great. Everything was on.
This time we worked in it, like, you have to go.
Okay. Yeah.
My guy.
Yeah. They go
Young,
Yeah.
yeah, they do have some very, respectful, very.
You miss, no. Especially if you had not the height, you know, something like that, not having that much height, so that.
I enjoy it. It's not terribly. He just.
And like, they work, even ever freeze over. Is that what's all?
That's.
Yeah.
So we, just so you know, we did call.
I think it's.
Yeah, I noted that.
Oils or just doing it.
And,
Yeah, I mean, cause I can't think of anything else.
Oh, right.
It was so funny, yes, somebody else, the other morning, very, they back up to Washington, I'm sitting there, Jamie, I drive to here. I'm sitting there and I realized, they had a small, really, yeah, like a raise.
Oh.
It's like, that's super impressive.
Yeah, I had it, when we first moved up here, I had a friend who had full 10 acres. But his backyard was like tiny. He's so obsessed with that, he'd get up at 4 in the morning. He had a PVC pipe, get a hot water tap up his garage, and then he would run hot water onto a PVC pipe, and just really install gas. So short story long, his neighbor's tree fell on the floors, right?
Oh,
And so it's like, I don't have. Floors, on the sun, high school, so.
So he used it for a long time before it.
Yeah, yeah, and then, I went to put it. So this is maybe like a 12, 15.
I would say.
So like, you know, nice, and we did.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, never took off, but that was 8 years ago, now it's.
That's so crazy. Yeah.
But they. So outside. Outside.
Yeah. But it's still so, I mean, it's so different.
I wouldn't use the word skip.
We're lucky that Winterfell has been able to like. Put
It is 8:32.
stuff in.
Get back into it. All right. So approval of board meeting minutes has been postponed till next month, so we'll have a majority in person quorum to approve them. So we're gonna modify the agenda a little bit. Yes. And I'd like to do all the finance piece before Matt's gotta go for a child pickup. So if that's okay with you guys. I'd like to move to number 11, January financial reports. Excuse me? No, we'll come back to it. Yeah, we're gonna skip it, we're gonna come back to it. Yes, yes. Is that right, everyone?
Yes.
That we are.
Should be reflected in the minutes.
It can be reflected in the minutes that we, this is that we did that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on agenda item 11, January financial reports. I'd like to go all the way through the budget. For Matt, please. So Renee is going to take us through revenue and expense for January as well as the check disbursements.
This board packet was so big, I had to divide it in 4 sections to get it uploaded on the website. And one of the reports, at the time that I ran it, the revenue and expenditures report was not accurate. I heard from Bettina on Monday. I told the finance committee about this. Our accountant hadn't updated the journal entries, so by the time I was doing the packet and running the reports on Sunday, they still hadn't been done until Monday, which is after I had to get it posted. Yeah, it was a unique situation that shouldn't happen again. And so what I can tell you is that the majority of the revenue and expenditures report, if you actually, I'm gonna pause. I would like to provide you the updated report, and if you postpone this maybe 5 minutes, I can come back and give you copies. I just think I want you to have the accurate reflection. Usually I print that report for you, but again, I didn't have it at the time when I made the board packet. So some numbers were, it's in my email.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, thank you. And I sent it to the staff because they keep track of their expenditures too. So that's why Eliza's gonna go print out more copies. And I didn't recall until I saw the packet when I told someone to X out the revenue and expenditures report, because it's not accurate.
Can we do checks then before we do?
Yes, we can do checks. Let's do checks. This has been a fun board meeting.
It's got a 13 here at the top.
Yeah, so it's at 13. And we'll come back to revenue and expenditures. The only thing I want to highlight here, everything is pretty consistent. We have and may continue to see use of our legal services. And so we received a variety of invoices from the work across the last 6 months. And so that's why the number is a little higher, because it spans a much broader amount of time. And so that is Ansel the link on page, the first page of the check disbursement report. You'll also note another payment to Maristem Advisors on page 275. That is Jamie Racklin, our financial consultant, municipal advisor, who will be presenting on Saturday for the board retreat. And so he and I met to discuss preparing for Saturday's presentation. Also, we had a lot of snow and salt in January. And so that's why Isaro Reyes has an increased amount due to him to help us with the shoveling and the salting of our building at all hours of operation. You'll note our brand new language resource, Rosetta Stone, which I referenced a couple of months ago. We paid for that, and so we have a year subscription to that. Very excited, and that again will be replacing Mango languages and our newsletter phone printers. That was for our newsletter.
Any questions on checks? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the January checks numbered?
15905 to 15940. And I so move.
Thank you, trustee Church.
I'll second.
Thank you, trustee Zadi. It's roll call vote.
Trustee Shaw.
Aye.
Trustee Church.
Aye.
Trustee Graziano. Aye. Trustee Jardine. Aye. Trustee Zadi.
Aye.
Trustee Friedman. Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, I think that's what they say. Right.
No, she's still making copies. I'd be happy to move on to the budget if you'd like, or we can wait, whatever.
Yeah, so let's move on to the budget. Right.
Bill is not here, otherwise he would generally be the one to present the budget documents. I would be happy to defer to either member of the finance committee, or I would be happy to present the updated version of 24-25, whatever you three or you two.
I'm fine with you walking over.
Okay, so key assumptions for our budget for next year. Number one, as discussed and approved by the board a couple months ago, we are budgeting for and are applying, applying's not the best word, a 5%, right? The P-TEL amount, the increase in the levy is aligned with the village, it'll be 5%. So you'll see that in our budget estimate, right? This first page, taxes, the first item, property taxes, go all the way over the green column, which is the percent change for next fiscal year compared to this fiscal year, so 5%.
And you all did approve the budget last month, so just to clarify.
The 24, that's right, because you did the
So that's what I wanted to
pay
give them.
scales and this. Thank
Yes,
you.
so just
Okay.
the changes that were.
I'll do my best since I wasn't here.
I've got your back.
Okay, so I'm also getting a little confused as to what page is what here. Sorry. So I think the other changes, big picture, I'm not gonna point to an exact line item here, is that the grant expenditures are now throughout the budget. And at the end of our operating budget, you're gonna see grants received and grant expenditures to zero out, like a, like a balance sheet, right?
We didn't have that before.
We did not have that before. So, let's see. Trying to think if there were any other major changes, Renee, we're gonna.
We zeroed out the fund balance. When the board approved it, there was fund balance, or there was fund balance was -30 or -40. So we will talk about that.
Okay, so on the very last page, before we get into the grants page, you'll see that there is no longer fund balance used. It's code line item 71000, fund balance contingency. We're now not using that anymore, in part because Renee spoke about $100,000 grant we're receiving for the library, originally applied for and granted in 2019. We've also applied for the accessibility grant. It's another $50,000. So in part, thanks to lots of grants, in part also due to expected higher interest income during fiscal year 24-25, Renee was able to kind of work a lot of magic to include the market corrections for salaries for our team here at the library, as well as, I think that's like the biggest
Cost.
yeah, just the biggest delta, the biggest change in approach, that's reflected in this budget. We're building our capability for identifying and applying for grants, which is allowing us to make some budgeting adjustments appropriately. Will it allow us to tackle the 1.7 million over the next year? No. And that's, again, just a small piece of the pie, not the whole pie.
I'll add that, Treasurer Bill, Hayes, really, we had a philosophical discussion about the idea of having fund balance in a negative on our approved budget. We could use our fund balance, or excuse me, the library board could approve to use the fund balance or at any point throughout the fiscal year. But having it in the actual budget as a negative was something that philosophically, we both eventually agreed that we don't need to do. We can incorporate the budget changes within the budget itself. But if at any point we need to dip into it, like we did for the furnace, we can still do that. We just don't have to budget for the negative. So when we talked about this and brought this idea to the finance committee, again, recently, the agreement was, yeah, let's just have the money presented in this way, with the grant zeroing out and some additional changes made without necessarily going into the negative when we are addressing so many financial priorities for the library. So we were able to do that with the numbers and still carry the $150,000 for the salary adjustments for staff, still incorporate the changes we made as staff. We did a lot of cutting the budget this year to be smarter about the budget that we're presenting to you all. So that's how I would summarize the change. And because of these changes, Bill and I both felt this budget needed to come back to the board a second time for reapproval. Because it changed so significantly from what you approved at the last month.
Any questions about the 24-25 fiscal year budget? Right, and I can have a motion to approve it. This would be our final budget and will be submitted to the village.
I so move to approve the amended budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you, trustee Jarrett. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, trustee Dowdy. We'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, trustee Shaw.
Aye.
Trustee Church.
Aye.
Trustee Graziano.
Aye.
Trustee Jardine.
Aye.
Trustee Zowdy.
Aye.
Trustee Friedman, aye.
Okay, great, guys have it. We'll quickly do 2025-26. Maybe Renee, you can explain why we're looking at 25-26?
Yes, I can, and I'm happy to open it up to either Matt or Bonnie to add as well. The village approves the budget biannually, so every 2 years. And also, we present the budget every year to the village, like we just did for 24-25. But on even years, we need to propose both the 24-25 and the 25-26 budget, as if we are presenting 2 separate years of budget. And this is the process that the village has. This is the way that the library has prepared budgeting. For those that have been on the board longer, you'll remember you approved, multiple budgets in the even years. And so what's interesting is that we budget for 25-26 now, but the board will still have the ability to approve this budget at the end of next fiscal year with more real actual numbers. So this presentation that I gave to the finance committee is really, it's a placeholder for what we will gain more information about our budgetary needs for at the end of next fiscal year. So we'll have the same budgetary process at the finance committee, talk about every line item that we need and bring it here to the board, but we need to have something to submit to the village now for that year. Does this make sense? So like Matt and I were talking to the finance committee, like, do we look at our actual needs? Do we look at like more philosophically, do we just bump everything up another 5%? And I deferred more to the latter, but I did make some adjustments to what I know already we will need, say, for example, for personnel. We've told staff that we're going to be adjusting their salary to the new market meet midpoint, but we also haven't been able to incorporate the other adjustments for those staff that are farther along in their career here. So stratifying those salaries a little bit more. So I did put more than just, a 5% increase in that line. Now, at some point, I'm gonna need to figure out the exact amount. And that's when I will present that to the finance committee sometime next budget year, and we'll have real numbers, but for now, these are estimates. Matt, I did incorporate your suggestion to increase ebooks at a higher rate. So we were talking about just the need for more and more funding for ebooks. You'll hear from me later that our digital circ hit new records this month. That we haven't ever had before, surpassing circulation. But our budget doesn't incorporate all of the money that we spend on ebooks. We use per capita grant, approximately $8,000 a year, just to fund additional money that we need for ebooks. I would love to see that money, that budget, take on the funding for all of our ebook needs, all of our collections, so we are not reliant on a grant just to deliver much needed, arguably one of the most popular aspects of services to our community. I want to see our budget absorb it operationally. So I made that adjustment, added about 8,000 in since even the last finance committee, and adjusted some other lines here and there. So staff, don't get scared if you see a budget line that's reduced a little bit that we haven't talked about. This is really just a placeholder, because there are a couple of those too. Because we have to figure out exactly. But what I did was I used another 5% levy. We don't know what this library is going to do when it comes to our future in the next 2 years. So again, this is theoretical, and that's how I incorporated. In terms of the grants, I did use the same numbers, not to say that I know we will get another $100,000 somewhere somehow, but I'm confident in our grant writing abilities, and I will continue to explore opportunities. But again, this is more philosophical than anything else. You'll still have a chance to approve the real numbers in 25 for the 25-26 budget. Did I miss anything, Matt, Bonnie?
The only thing I was gonna add on the ebooks part, on the additional component of the logic too, was as we start to change the shelving and potentially reduce the fiscal circulation, that could augment some of that offset, and you see that in like the fiction, nonfiction periodicals, those reductions in there.
And those are conversations we've had and will continue having. I've talked to managers about the code compliance survey. Every staff member has reviewed that report in full months ago, actually. And so we talked about the implications of having to bring our shelving down and what that might be to this current footprint of the library and how that will affect collection sizes.
Right, and of course, a key component of that is utilization.
Yeah,
Are the books that we physically house, the movies we physically house, the video games we physically house, are they being used or not?
and I think great conversations have already started, and staff are doing really good jobs analyzing the collections using new and different reports, and so our capabilities will only increase. So again, philosophical numbers, not official, but still something we have to present to the board, the village board, for the biennial budget.
Any other questions on 25-26 budget? There a motion to approve?
A motion to approve the 25-26 budget.
Yeah, you trustee Zadi? I'll say this. Thank you, trustee Gerardini. Roll call vote.
Trustee Shaw,
Aye.
trustee Church, trustee Graziano, trustee Giardini, trustee Dowdy, Steckman, aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So we're gonna go back to revenue and expenditure for the month of January.
I just want to say thank you to the finance committee, who has done a lot of work on budgeting. So you have the newly printed, thank you, Eliza, for helping with this. Revenue and expenditure report, which is accurate, incorporating all the journal entries that are appropriate for this last month. I don't have a ton of things to highlight, except I really like the fact that our interest keeps getting higher. We're approaching about $4,000, just on interest alone this month. So as you can see, we are well above, expected revenue. Which is why also, I'm very happy to say, you'll note in the miscellaneous income, a deposit of $84,496.87, bringing our total revenue above budgeted expected, revenue to 105%, at 105.84%. I think that will only grow, given we're only at the end of January, and we still have February, March, April for interest accruals. And who knows, there might be a grant in there somewhere that we can deposit. So I just wanted to highlight the revenue section. In terms of expenditures, I'm regularly talking to staff. I just sent another email yesterday or the day before about how we have approximately 2.5 to 3 months left in our fiscal year. And so staff are connecting with their managers about their plans and where they are in terms of either overspending, underspending, or right on the money spending, so that I have a better sense of our financial standing for the different budget lines. There are definitely lines we talk about every month that we know we're overspending, such as building and maintenance, such as legal and professional and contractual. We knew the copier was going to be overspent because of the agreement, but the budget that you just approved incorporates those monthly increases very nicely. And so I'm pleased with the way that spending is going. And in general, as we end the fiscal year, we're going to look for those opportunities for savings, just like we did last year. So to help make up for the overages and some of the other budget lines. So that's why staff are reporting to their managers about their budget lines, so I can have a closer sense of where we are. Happy to answer any questions about the revenue and expenditure report.
Renee, so grants,
Yes.
we have year-to-date received 46.7. Total expenditures are at 42.
Where are you?
Grants, page 4 of 5.
Yes, thank you.
So the delta of 4,573, is there a particular item in mind for?
So this is grants and gifts. So just to clarify that, there are a couple of reasons why that has a balance. And then I'll share just some practicalities of like the way that our auditors prefer that we charge things to, which is a little bit explaining why we don't quite know the remaining amount unless we see this monthly report. So the Friends of the Library, when we submit donation requests to them, we do our best to estimate how much each item costs. And we say that an item can cost up to this amount. An example of when we had cost savings was with the furniture. We asked the Friends of the Library to fund brand new chairs. We had a conversation at Building and Grounds that we would reupholster the existing chairs and we would actually save money. At that point, we had already asked for the friend donation for the full amount of the new chairs, and they had already agreed to give it to us, and they wrote the check already. And so by the time it came to getting the new chairs, there was a significant savings. So some of that balance is the extra Friends money. That you and we would discuss that we came in really under. The other aspect of this is that there's an unknowable amount of, or there's an element of unknownness with where this money comes from and how it's delegated. When we get gifts from the community, they're entered into essentially an account, our gift account. It's the same account where a friend's money goes. It's the same account where someone off the street said, someone passed away, I want to donate $100 to the library in their name. It's all one account. The library, and I talked to Laurence about this, our bookkeeper, and I've talked to a few other, Martha and a couple other staff. The library has not tracked historically in a spreadsheet what goes in and what comes out. We have the account here because it's all one account, but there hasn't been anyone monitoring, this is this money for this reason, this is that money for this reason. And so when we receive donations, when we receive, like, for example, the employee recognition fund that's a lot of you donated to, it goes into this fund. It sits there until I decide to spend it, and I track that amount of spending. But it also sits there with friends' money, it also sits there with, you know, daily donations of, oh, I paid $1 for copier, you know, copies, but I only needed to pay 50 cents. You keep the rest of the 50 cents. Any of that extra money goes into this fund. Sorry, that was a long explanation. I admit that I am sleep deprived, but also it's something that Laurence and I have discussed, and we need to figure it out. Because I don't want money just sitting there not spent if we can spend it on things that make an impact.
And I know we have a list of things for the Friends consideration. I don't know if we've communicated to them, hey, we underspent on our previous.
We have not yet, we have not, because we just paid the final invoice for those chairs and tables. So the right thing to do would be to say, hey, we underspent, we're looking at maybe using this money for this. What do you think?
Okay. Any other questions on January revenues and expense? Seeing none, any motions related to the January revenues and expense?
I will move to accept the January revenues and expense report as given.
Thank you, trustee George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Dowdy. Roll call. Trustee Shaw, aye. Trustee George, aye. Trustee Graziano, aye. Trustee Jardine, aye. Trustee Dowdy,
Aye.
trustee Freeman, aye. Thank you, everyone. That's all of the finance pieces done.
I'm gonna use this.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. So again, it's like back in sequence on the agenda. I suggest we go to the Renee's report. Nothing. It was section
9. Well, I just want to acknowledge all the trustees again for a wonderful staff luncheon that we celebrated at the beginning of the month. Our staff really enjoyed the opportunity to connect and you know, enjoy some social time and being really well fed. We loved the leftovers. So thank you to all of the trustees for what was a very wonderfully wonderful recognition, and very appreciated. Thank you. Second that from Eliza. Thank you very much. I did provide an overview of the PPRT work, but this paragraph in no way, shape, or form covers all of the things that happened in January with that, including Bonnie's presentation, the work that we did with Joan Courtney's and understanding the history of the library, all the data that Martha O'Hara ran for us, and the research. It's really a wonderful team effort. Just want to acknowledge all of you again for that. I do want to just high level overview acknowledge that in January, due to illness, I wasn't able to go to the chamber event, the chamber annual breakfast, but Jillian Chapman, our community engagement and communications manager, and trustee Sandy Jardine attended. And I think that was a wonderful way for our chair of our engagement committee to get out and have some face time. So thank you, trustee Jardine, really appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that We continue to evaluate our passport services, and there's more information in the report that I have for you on the monthly hours pilot. In January, we still only had one staff person who was providing passports, and they were able to process 17 of them. And as I mentioned last month, we're keeping track of our notary transactions. We added a new staff member who is now certified to do that, and we had 21 notary transactions, and those can happen anytime, on the weekends especially. So some really, really great work by staff. I mentioned already digital circulation broke records, and so did our consortium that we're a part of, Digital Library of Illinois. We are a member, and we share ebooks and e-sharing with a variety of other libraries. It set records for over 3 million checkouts. You may have seen us post on that on social media. And I provided some additional information about our budget. It is something that we're going to need to continue to really strategically address in our budget, the increased costs and the increased usage, of course, which is why we should increase costs of that collection in our community. Very popular. I do want to acknowledge also that the Friends of the Library sponsored a very generous gift of library branded fleeces, and that gift was for staff to not only proudly display our library, but also help us stay warm, and boy, did they come in handy this month. And so that was our most engaged popular social media post, and just an acknowledgement to the friends. Communications, there was a lot this month. There was a lot to communicate to the public, especially, and our priorities were the new pilot hours, the PPRT receiving, and the HVAC closures. I just want to thank Martha and Jillian for their great work. We had to connect regularly to discuss how we would communicate to the public. All the managers had to get together and communicate to the staff, so that's another thank you. But we had to really strategically consider, how would we talk about the furnace and the HVAC breaking to the public? And could we use this as an opportunity to consider letting the community know how our systems are really doing? And what I've heard from staff, maybe a couple of you, when the news of the HVAC came out, there was a lot of public shock. People having no idea, I know we talked about this in building grounds, having no idea we were in a situation that would result in that. And so we can continue talking about this on Saturday in the board retreat, but I think that you've heard from me, transparency is really important. I think the community needs to know what's happening at the library in an authentic way. And I use that opportunity, plus with the PPRT, to talk about how the library is funded, how much of your tax bill it goes to the library, but also what are we actively doing, like tonight's presentation with Egbert Anderson. So all of that was shared broadly with the public. And I've gotten feedback from staff who know people in the community and also other staff at other libraries. And there have been some very positive comments about our communication about things such as this. So good changes. Just wanted to share that feedback with you. We had a very successful winter reading club, and I'm so pleased to share all these green numbers with percentages of increase of attendance and participation. And just the other day, I think it was today, our Friends of the Library officially approved funding our summer reading program prizes, which I think will only further entice and encourage people to participate in our reading programs and check out more books and visit the library and download more media. So kudos to the youth services team, and also Martha O'Hara, who helped lead the winter reading program this year for the adults. Those are excellent numbers, so thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. There's a lot here in building and maintenance and technology, but in general, I'm going to look for more opportunities to evaluate our dashboard with the technology, with the statistics. We made a couple of changes last month that I highlighted, but there's new data that I want to present to you all starting our new fiscal year. And one of those pieces of data is how many, well, we report this to IFLAR, our state library report, but how many questions do we answer at the desk? So that you can tell how busy we are day to day. A lot of libraries report on that, and it's surprising this library doesn't. How many times our study room is used? You know, that's a thing that the library study room is an asset to the community, and I would want you all to know about that. So we're going to continue evaluating the data and refine it to have specific meeting for staff that's a little bit clearer. And frankly, have a report that's a little easier to read, but I haven't been able to prioritize that yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Renee. So that takes us to committee reports. I have another suggestion to hopefully make our time together tonight efficient. We have action items from the bylaws building around finance. My recommendation is we table the committee reports and just have technology engagement report out. Is that okay? All right. Okay. So we're gonna go to item number 12. Or, no, wait, sorry. We'll stay in order. Technology committee update. I will give that quickly. So the technology committee met Thursday last week. And our biggest request is to ask our friends in bylaws and policy to please update our bylaws so that finance and technology are one committee, to make us a little more efficient on the night. And the content of the meeting. Renee brought to our attention the fact that the laptops, the computers in the building are all laptops. Pretty much, yeah, they're all laptops. There were about 22 total.
Correct, a couple things.
Yeah.
So the report was on staff and public computers, some of which are laptops, not all of them.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. Thank you. We have 4 computers that go back to 2012. Wow, they are now 14 years old. I don't know about you, but I'm lucky to get 14 months out of my computers. And in the workplace, 3 years, everybody gets a new computer every 3 years, so that you don't go through the stress of opening, you know, your computer to work and it doesn't work.
They're still running Windows 7.
Yes, so 3 of them still run Windows 7. My notes are not clean, that's but I did the minutes from this, so I figured it out.
That's it.
And then the remaining laptops of concern are from 2019, so they're approaching 5 years each.
Both the laptops that we offer to the public as well as staff computers.
So realizing we don't have money to replace them all in our operating budget, Renee has agreed to, since the smoke clears maybe from the retreat, to look for grants opportunities to cover these costs. I do wonder myself, is this something maybe we go to like Forest Bank and Trust?
It's possible.
So that like they replace some of them in soon, and then some 12 months later, and then some 12 months later if they last long enough for that, because ideally that's what you would do with your pool of laptops. You'd stagger them in terms of the replacement dates.
And so a little background, in 2019, the library had the Friends fund a portion of the computer purchases to augment the cost of having to buy all those computers. And so on short term, I think that's a great solution, and I think we need to find every financial opportunity there is. And also, I think the history of this library is such that because there's not been any planning, this same thing happens every 5 years. So we don't have budget in our operating budget to cover the cost of replacing computers. And so the 2 that we had replaced this year are $1,500 each. our budget line is overspent for that, and we know it because these staff need these computers. But we don't have a replacement plan in place. So just as we would have a replacement plan for mechanical, electrical systems, we should have a replacement plan for our technology. And I think short-term, a grant, the Lake Forest Bacon Trust, Abbott, anyone who's willing to give us money right now to get new computers, I'd love to take it. But I don't want to see what happens to this library. Use the same strategy as before. We do need operating costs to increase for technology. So yes, and.
Yes, we should have funding in our operating budget to replace a third of the computers every year. We do.
Wait, how many public laptops do you guys have?
So laptops are public computers.
Oh, is it, there's the public computers and then there's the laptops that the staff use. Is that right?
So we have, and Martha, do you know the numbers off the top of your head, 22 computers in the whole library?
That sounds about right. I know we've got 6 patron laptops, 2 of which are set up that kind of they're set up like desktops, but 6 public laptops. And then there's like the catalog computer, that's the one that's 12 years old. And then the 4 in the youth services department, those are the others that are still running Windows 7. And then for staff desktops, I believe it's 13.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of 5 staff laptops that we just purchased.
So what we're covering right now is just the idea that we have some laptops and we have some desktops. We have some laptops for the public and we have some laptops for staff. But the majority of staff computers are PCs, desktops. They're not staff laptops. So in general, when I went to the finance committee, I said, we have 22 computers that need to be replaced. Whether it's a laptop or a PC, it depends on what it is or who it's for.
Yeah, I was just curious about like the 6 public laptops. Those are ones that people check out.
Yes, those are the ones that they check out and use in the library. Those were funded by the Friends. Those are from 2019 as well.
And those are like, how often are people checking out laptops?
I don't know if we have any usage statistics off the top of our head, and Katie's upstairs, so she would know better. Martha, do you have any anecdotal thing to share?
The laptops are not taken out in the
Outside.
building as much, but the people seem to prefer the desktop setup that even though they're laptops. So we definitely see more usage with those 2. The others is relatively infrequent that people want to borrow the laptop in the building.
So you can get it at the circulation desk, but you have to use it in the building.
And I think in 2019, the idea or the hope was people will want to use the laptops in the building and go anywhere where they want. We have a significant portion of the population that prefers desktop setup that does not prefer laptops. So not generalizing, but older adults would prefer the desktop situation and the setup compared to using the laptop computer and the laptop keyboard because they're smaller. And so they don't get used as much. And also I think it's an awareness piece, but I do think this community probably, they're coming to the library to use the space for our internet. They probably will have their own device. Otherwise, they'll want to use the desktop.
So would we replace those computers or are you gonna phase those out?
I don't have an answer to that question. We need to evaluate it, but the Friends of the Library did purchase those for us 5 years ago, and they do serve some element of service. We would need to do an analysis of that.
Yeah.
To your point, yeah, to see if they're even serving the use that they were intended to serve at the time of purchase. So, yeah,
And if not, can they be repurposed in some way?
yeah,
You know,
they're still from 2018.
right.
That just amazes me. It's been that long.
Mhm.
It seemed like it was like 2 years ago.
I don't know,
Well, there was probably like a period of time where they wouldn't use it at all because that was COVID.
Right.
So.
Well, I think did staff take laptops home with them during COVID?
No, we had no library provided laptops. We used our personal devices.
Oh, Eliza, your face. but, yeah, I can't speak. for that.
Sorry, just a few questions.
No,
Okay,
okay,
so
good.
that's the computer update. The second piece was, we talked about, Renee updated us on the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Grant. It's the $100,000 2019 grant, and safety and security or life safety measures for the building have been prioritized for that. Renee said CBI has already been in to evaluate and make a recommendation on a system that would include security cameras, paging system, software, run the whole thing, door fob access, door alarms.
The goal of this being, if it's a system that we can take out and put back in after a construction project, these were the ones I wanted to prioritize because there are lots of questions the board has to discuss and answer about the future of the capital needs of the library, and $100,000, for example, isn't going to cover the cost of new windows. And so what can we get now that we can use and benefit the capital of the building, but potentially and definitely reuse if the configuration for the building changes? So we had about 10, almost like 10 people from CBI come in and walk around and as a group, all of them from about different systems, and Martha was there, and we had a great meeting and they were working on their budget proposals and just waiting. So they're expediting.
Okay, on to the engagement committee. Oh, any other thoughts?
A couple things. We are, we're working on a few things. One of the things we're working on is the onboarding of, new staff member or new, I'm sorry, trustees. And so we've gathered information from other libraries and we're making a packet and, a checklist. So that it takes a lot of work off of Renee's shoulders and puts it it becomes, you know, more obvious what needs to be done, and then that'll follow a schedule as well. If anyone has, thank you, Ally, if anyone has any thoughts about what they would like to see have happen or see as onboarding that maybe we could take into account, that would be great. Ally just sent me something today, so.
That's great.
Yeah, and so, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but, we could just really use any suggestions that people might have. The other one is community engagement, and so one of the things we're really looking at is what groups are people comfortable getting in front of? Who has connections with groups around our town and who would be comfortable going out. And so we're working on a cohesive and comprehensive message so that we cover everything when we go out to talk to people about what we need and what the library offers, because I think a lot of people don't know. So I think
In fact, I had an idea, I'm just gonna throw it on the table in it, maybe a moment of levity, but it is really, I do request the staff consider it. Could we do a library trivia night where it's all like trivia about the library, or a night at the library event where it's kind of like fun and there's maybe donated prize? Have you guys already talked about this? Like Jenny, you were smiling.
Oh, no, it sounds so fun. I would go.
I will tell you, our trivia team does such a great job diversifying the categories of trivia. And they have,
Go ahead, sorry.
they have incorporated information about the library in different rounds. And I will tell you, the trivia participants that we have are very particular about what is covered. And when it is library topic driven, there is feedback shared because they don't know about the library, but the staff still do it as a way to help them understand and teach them about the library. So I want to let you know, we already do that, incorporating into rounds. Whether, you know, we do like one library theme night, that bring that to the managers. But I do think that there's an element of like welcoming people to the library, especially like in previous libraries I've worked at. I had an event for new families to Glen Ellen. And so if they were new to the community, and it was at the beginning of the school year, because a lot of people move over the summer, it was like a, hey, come to the library, get a tour with one of your local librarians. You know, we gave away free books to kids. There's an element of libraries that I think libraries are just not good at PR and marketing. We don't have that in our arsenal. We go and get our library degree, and also the branding of libraries is such that it's books. People think of only books, but we know that there's so much more than just books. So it behooves us to talk about those things, which is why I love the engagement committee's work.
So here, I was thinking of like combining a couple things, like when we get the signage that people probably won't notice anyway, why don't we do like a treasure hunt? Or so, you know, we could do stuff like that, like just to, so that people are aware of where the signs are and think.
Eliza has something to add.
We frequently do scavenger hunts and youth services for that purpose.
Yes.
So, let me know if you want ideas.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think one of them was for the back to school event. And it was literally to help teach kids about how to use the library, like go find this book and then how to use it on the catalog. So that was really well done. There's, you know, library user skills that people need to develop over time. Yeah, send your ideas to Sandy and the engagement committee.
Great.
Anything else? Sorry, I jumped
No,
in.
that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll move to new business item 12C, which is an action item on the collection development. Did I forget something?
Yes, no, and I want to start by saying I was tasked to create a director's memo for this, and I failed to do so. And so usually when you see a policy update, you have a director's memo that goes over the history, the research of the libraries, and that was tasked to me, and I just want to acknowledge to Ally and Matt, who's not here, that didn't get done. But what I'd like to do is just kind of talk through it, or defer to Ally, if you'd like to talk about it.
I'm happy to, but please jump in. So the collections development policy you have in front of you is just like a trimmed down version of the original, and this was something we approached with a two-part process. The first was to take a look at the policy and make sure that it's in compliance with Illinois law specific to the last section, which is section 6 under intellectual freedom, making sure that it has language that states the freedom to acquire material without external limitation, and to make sure that that section was fully like fleshed out in accordance with the January 1st, 2024 law going into effect. In addition, we went through and we sort of trimmed the fat, if you will. We took out a lot of very specific numbers, like how big the collection is, exactly like demographics, and a lot of things are changing. We did not think it was necessary, nor would it be like super helpful to have to update that every year. So what we focused on was getting rid of the things that were either out of date that we could say, you know, right away. One section on gifts had something like, we will take your old books, and we're not doing that anymore. So things that we knew for sure, we could take out. We're presenting it tonight for the board to approve with the understanding that there will be a second, much more in-depth revision done by library staff to make sure that it is representative of the collections development that happens every day in the library. We did not add in anything with the exception of the language in the intellectual freedom section.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
So a quick question, how would the updates to the intellectual freedom section perhaps impact when we receive requests for reconsideration?
So we have a whole separate policy, sorry, no, go for it. So we have a whole separate policy that is called reconsideration of library materials that identifies the process with which we follow. I know Janie's nodding her head, and that was followed when, someone came to the library, you know, at the beginning of Katie's tenure as interim director. And so, the intellectual freedom changes that were made were more or less related to, the state law and the new regulations that we must adopt, the ALA's, Bill of Rights, as opposed to any changes in terms of the existing policy. So anyone at the library, would have this policy referenced, or we would give them a copy of this policy if they had questions about how library materials are selected, and their rights to be able to request reconsideration. One of the changes that I anticipate staff updates will include is to have a direct through line to our value statement. This current version does not have a reference to the value statement that the board approved in 2020 that lists accountability, customer service, diversity, all of those things that we have on our website that inform the role of the library and inform the values that we embody as an organization. And so back to your original question, this is a value of public libraries in this country, and so intellectual freedom is an important aspect of our work and also the public's right to read and view. And so that's why it's so critical to address it so directly in the collection development policy.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions about the updated collection development policy? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve?
So
Thank you, trustee Church. Is there a second?
Second,
I'm sorry, was that Jenny or? Jenny?
yes, I think so, yeah.
Gotcha. Is this, can you just do a voice vote?
Yes.
Okay, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstain? It passes.
And so we have an updated collection development policy that hasn't been updated since 2018, even though Illinois law says you have to update it every 2 years. So thank you so much for it.
Great. Thank you to the committee
Thank you.
for their work on this. Appreciate that. Right, our next action item is a resolution. The finance committee did discuss this, and actually prior to the finance committee meeting last week. Renee had emailed all of us to make us aware of the fact that the Illinois General Assembly had a sponsor for a bill that would change the threshold for libraries to complete competitive bidding or the RFP process. A nearby state senator, Mary Edley Allen, she covers, I think, Grays Lake area. I did look her up. Is the primary sponsor for this bill. And if the library passes this resolution here today, we will be sending it to our local representatives, Bob Morgan, State Senator Julie Morrison. I'd like to also send it to the lead sponsor of the bill. So if I have to read it, do I have to read it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, so resolution, what's that?
You've done a very great job.
Thank you. Resolution in support of State Bill 2787, which amends the Illinois Local Library Act and the Public Library District Act of 1991 regarding competitive bidding. Whereas Illinois State Senator Mary Edley Allen has introduced legislation to amend the Illinois Local Library Act and the Public Library District Act of 1991 to increase the competitive bidding requirement for contracts in excess of $35,000 rather than $25,000 for specified improvements and equipment purchases. And whereas the competitive bidding threshold for Illinois libraries has been $25,000 for almost 20 years, and whereas the Illinois Library Association, our statewide professional organization that represents and advocates for Illinois libraries, is a proponent of this bill as an inflationary adjustment, and whereas State Bill 2787 has, as of February 15th, over 230 proponents. Those of you who did witness slips, thank you. And only 2 opponents on record through witness slips. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Lake Bluff Public Library supports the amendment of the Illinois Local Library Act and the Public Library District Act of 1991 to adjust the competitive bidding requirement. It just kind of repeats itself. From 21 to 35 for contracts for specified improvements and equipment purchases adopted today pursuant to a roll call vote as follows. So what do? Do we write the number of yeas?
Numbers.
Okay, just the numbers of yeas. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, trustee Shaw.
Aye.
Trustee Church.
Aye.
Trustee Graziano. Aye. Trustee Jardine.
Aye.
Trustee Friedman. Aye. We have 5, yeah.
And 2 absents.
Yes.
And what I would say now is Katie, our official notary, would be glad to notarize one of your copies today after Bonnie and Jenny have their signature. And then we will scan, I have a copy here.
You have a copy without this one, but that, but
It'll scan, you won't see that.
Okay.
Trust me. So yes, the resolution passes.
awesome. Yeah, I
Thank
think
you,
so.
board.
Yeah. Legislatively aware. Thank
Yeah.
you for pointing that out. You'll just sign here.
Yes.
Katie, do you need a copy of my license or something to?
No.
confirm?
No, I
Just witnesses.
and because I know you,
Yeah.
I can do that without,
Okay.
unless it asks for that information.
Here, Jane. Okay. And if you guys think of anybody else we should send it to.
Sandy.
Park. Yeah, you can see.
Should we put 502?
Correct. Pencil that in, thank you. And this is the wrong. Let's go here.
Thank you, Bonnie,
Great.
for
Good,
leading that resolution.
You're welcome. That takes us to item 12E, like Edward, presentation and discussion of the hours pilot report for 2024. So our next.
So, this is the first month that I'm presenting a report to you all about the hours pilot. And I want to continue making this as effective as possible. And so if there's information that you don't see here or have heard tonight, let me know and we can incorporate it into next month. There are a couple of documents that you have here that I just want to overview first. The first one is the actual hours monthly report, which has a chart at the top, a table, and then narratives on the bottom, and on the other side. You have a printout of comments and feedback that we received from the community during the month. Thank you so much, Jordan. Congratulations, board. I will scan this and send it to you, Bonnie, for signing to our legislature. So you have the printout of the comments that we've received, anonymized of course. And then also you have a heat map. You'll recognize this from last fall when we were doing some pretty strategic evaluation of a number of people in the building. It's towards the end.
Oh, okay,
I
reviewed it earlier today.
Yeah, sorry. And so I'm gonna go over each one of these things at kind of a high level and then just take time for questions and answer. But ultimately, you know, this time every month I'm going to be presenting a recap of the month with the pilot. So as staff can talk about their experiences and I can share the conversations that I'm having with the community, but also so that we can look at some of the data that we're seeing about usage, that we're seeing about organizational capacity, feedback from the managers about how the pilot has either increased, decreased, or stayed the same, their ability to staff desks, and so forth. So, oh, and then the last document is for reference. We talked about this last month, but the Illinois Standards for Public Libraries offers direction for hours of service two populations at different sizes. And as I mentioned in a board meeting previously, the minimum growing established in advance relates to staffing levels and communities. So for example, if we were on the low end of population 5,000 to 9,999, which we are, if we had staffing at a minimum level, which I would argue we do, we would be more or less encouraged to stay around 48. If we had a growing staff and our population was growing actively, we might be recommended to be open approximately 56 hours. And this is where that Lake County Chronicle article got it wrong. They were saying that this chart requires us to be open on Sundays. It does not. Based on our hours and our population and our staffing levels, it recommends weekend hours, which we do provide, but based on Illinois Library Association standards, we don't fit the parameters for Sunday hours. Whereas if we had a much more advanced level of staffing, we would be able to potentially carry that. So I'm going to include this every month for the next 5 months. As a reference, I think Bonnie may have recommended that, or we talked about the idea of that to share with the public that recommendation. But ultimately, it's the board's decision to guide with advice from the library staff what the hours are for each unique community. One highlight I want to share first on the hours monthly report table is that the attendance in the library on Tuesday evenings and Thursday evenings has not seen a dramatic increase, even though those are the hours that we are still open for evenings. So when you look at our evening numbers on the heat map, and I just brought in the data from the heat map on this table here. And you look at Monday hours, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Well, 6 p.m. is not accurate. So it would be 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. because we close at 6 on Mondays. And you look at Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. To 6, you're going to see higher activity in those time frames than you are going to see Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. So I remember when Bill said a couple of months ago, well, this data shows that our attendance in the evenings is pretty low. Couldn't you consider closing more than just 2 evenings? And we said, or I said at the time, this was staff recommendation to be open at least 2 evenings a week to provide time for programming and to support other needs of other users of the library. And a lot of the feedback I'm getting is from working parents for weekend hours, specifically Sundays, but working parents and caregivers would also benefit from evening hours. So I'm just showing you some correlations that I'm noticing. We haven't seen a bigger uptick in usage in evenings, even though we're only now open for 2 evenings a week. That isn't the same for our Saturdays. Comparing to previous months, our usage on Saturdays has gone up considerably. I'm not surprised given that there are certain users that only can use the library on weekends. And so as we thought, not having Sunday hours, we would see higher traffic on Saturdays. And so some people have even talked to me about, well, the library is so busy on Saturdays, I would love time on Sundays so that I don't have to be there during the busy hours, because people do prefer different busy levels of the library at different times. But so that is one thing that we are seeing. This will come up when we talk about the survey, but we continue to see high usage of the library in the mornings. I regularly have requests, and Eliza does too, from her caregivers, asking us to open the library at 9 so that families or caregivers with young children have somewhere to go in the morning. We have people waiting at the door at 10 o'clock in the morning on a lot of occasions, and other libraries are open at 9. And so I would say that this data is something that we want to keep keep looking at and gathering that feedback from the community. When we do our survey, I know I've talked to Eliza that she's going to be working directly with the caregivers she sees on a regular basis to participate so that we can get their feedback counted. But you know, a lot of the feedback I've heard is, well, my kid is taking their first nap around 10 or 11 and I need that earlier time. So that is very legitimate and something to consider.
Can I pop in?
Please pop in, yeah.
This feels like a good moment to say that a lot of the caregivers are not represented on this heat map. They come in with their strollers, they
Yeah.
go straight down.
Down
There. So I did a couple of samples just to check how many people were in preschool room. Routinely between 10 and 12, we see up to about 20 people in the preschool room that are not represented on this heat map from the 10 till 12 hours.
I remember you talking about that, and I'm glad that you remembered to bring that up tonight, because that was something this data is only as accurate as the technology we have. We only have the technology at one location. We miss a lot of visits to the library. Just today, I was looking at a variety of tweens coming in and out of the youth department, going down the elevator. They love being independent, using the elevator. So, and going past, as Sean said, past the staff, and not having to interface with them. So the data is, again, you know, imperfect, and we knew that kind of going into it. But that's why it's important to have it come from a variety of sources. So thank you, Eliza, for the work that you and your team are doing to assess usage. So that's the visit count. I want to talk about staff leave a little bit and say that you may have remembered in previous months when we were evaluating staff leave. I don't have the printout here, but I just put the numbers here for you. The library, any organization who serves the public needs to carry some level of absences or, you know, staff calling in sick in order to provide service to the community. And we have 16 part-timers. Not all of them receive benefits, so they don't have paid leave. And we have 6 full-timers. Those staff do receive paid leave in the categories that I've listed here. And so my goal with tracking these numbers, like I did last fall, but also now in the pilot, is to try and figure out what percentage of leave we need to carry from eventually a budgetary standpoint. We're talking about that at the finance committee, but from an organizational standpoint, we need to overstaff or have more than what we need because we need to build in that extra flexibility for when people call in sick, for when people take vacation, as Katie just did, for when someone has a death in the family for holiday time. And so the percentage that you see here of all of the amount of hours that we paid staff, and that includes both work time and leave time, 13.3% of the total hours paid are leave. And so extrapolating that out, we need to carry some level of leave each month in our staffing model. And so I'm trying to, you know, pinpoint that number, knowing that, you know, leave time is seasonal. I'm going to show you these numbers from February next month, but you're going to see this number increase. We had a lot of staff sickness this month. We had another staff person go on emergency leave. This number is going to increase next month. And so we felt it in the organization this month, keeping desks staffed, which we have, but the relief of the hours has been noticed, and that's where some of the feedback from managers have come in. So I wanted to highlight that, and I'll highlight that every month. You know, I feel like the number of programs we canceled, it's not really like fair data, because the reason we canceled the programs was because of the HVAC. It's not about staffing, but I'm still reporting it because it's programs canceled. And the 2 that we couldn't get rescheduled were story time. And so I wanted to share that with you. For the same reason, we had to make a lot of cancellations for passports and finding new times, but we were able to recoup almost all of them in rescheduling. So those are good things. Next month, you'll see staff hours are adding back to Passport. Martha's taking on hours again in Passport starting in February. And so that will not be a zero next month. And I hope we don't have to remove any hours, but basically the feedback about passports is we want more, and we want more availability on weekends. So we don't provide passports on weekends because we don't have the staffing to do that, or we only.
Look at the heat map.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it's the
It's
same.
busy.
Yeah, it's busy, but also, the staff that we have who are certified as passport agents, are, not some of that regular staff that works weekends. And, 2 out of the 3 of them are managers. So yeah, just providing some more context for that.
On the passport piece, what I was digging through the package for was to confirm the number of passports that were processed.
Yeah,
So 17,
yes.
right?
These
So
are
I'm a little-
appointments.
I'm a little, these number of passport cancellations, number of passport appointments canceled, so that's like,
Sorry, I just forgot the word appointments in the above
okay.
line. It's number of passport appointments canceled, number of passport appointments rescheduled is what it should say. I apologize.
That's great. That explains it all.
No, yeah. I'm happy to answer any questions about this report before going into it. Obviously I won't cover all of the narrative, but I really do appreciate the managers providing such detailed and thorough analysis of organizational capacity and delivery of library services. Their quotes are very helpful in assessing kind of the overall delivery of services. So I'm happy to answer any of those questions.
I just have a quick question about the written feedback.
Yes.
The colorful.
Mhm.
Are these actually comment cards that somebody, or emails that somebody
Both.
sent to? Both, okay. I wasn't sure if they were conversations that the
No,
staff
these are-
then documented, or.
No, that's incorporated into the narrative here. These are actual emails or comment cards that have gotten written to me.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the pilot feedback? Again, this being the first month that we've seen it. Is that a focus on visit count on certain dates throughout the month? The averages, a look at the staffing model, what are we paying out, how many total hours paid? Impact on programs, although we should probably, make this January and build out Feb.
Oh, that's already my plan. It's gonna be landscape and you're gonna see all the numbers next to each other.
Then maybe like a little asterisk here, just should we remember about.
HVAC,
Yeah, it's document.
I can clarify that
Piece. One thing on the hours that Matt pointed out when we discussed this last week in finance is 1 out of every 8 hours paid is an hour of leave.
I have no idea how that compares to other businesses.
Well, and I question, are other businesses open from 10 AM to 9 PM or, weekends too? We only have 6 full-timers and, as we discussed, public library work is not the highest paid work, but they do provide good benefits. And so one of the benefits public library work provides is that leave, because libraries are open all year long, which is different from schools and, it's, government community work. So the last thing I want to highlight about the pilot is what you will see coming up in the spring newsletter, which I have to credit Martha O'Hara, who essentially designed it and created it herself due to staff emergency leave. So huge kudos to Martha for all the work she did on the upcoming spring newsletter. You have a copy of my director letter in here, which goes over essentially trying to be as transparent as possible about how we're gathering feedback, what the board is going to be presented with each month, similar to what I shared with all of you. It will also include a survey, and there's going to be a QR code in every newsletter. We're going to have that in our library. We'll have that eventually on the A-frame. Our goal with the survey, this is what the managers and I put together. Our goal with the survey is to gather as much information as possible that the board and staff can use to make actionable, informed decision about changes in the hours. So we, having done a variety of research conferences myself on how to design surveys, I know Bonnie has a lot of that background too. You want to make them as brief as possible, but also incredibly clear. And we had various iterations of the wording of these to try and inform what I discussed with the managers were my priorities. I want to assess how the library is being used versus what opportunities for changes in the schedule there might be. So for example, the first question really helps us understand people's anticipated or current use. Do they want the library to be open more in the mornings or more in the evenings? And the reason I'm having them choose is because I really want them to start thinking about if we add Sunday hours back, we're gonna have to make some adjustments to the rest of the week. And so having that choice be part of the question is ultimately going to drive people's thoughts about when they're most likely to use the library, when they want to come. And again, like help understand that it may not be able to be all of what they want, but if they had to prefer one option or the other, this will help us make those decisions. You as a board will be able to help make those decisions with this data. The second question, when are you most likely to use the library? The reason we're asking this question is to assess weekend usage. And so, for example, if we know, which we already do, everybody wants Sunday hours, not everybody, I'm exaggerating. A lot of people want Sunday hours back. If we make that change, I want them to start thinking about, well, maybe we might have to give some Saturday hours back to accommodate that. From a staffing level, that's the only way that I can see us being able to make any changes quickly without adding more staff to the library, which is also another possibility, but the board would have to discuss financing that. And so, you know, looking at our Saturday usage, it's pretty much all over the board. But, you know, if Sundays are really, what's that?
That's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, right. And so if Sundays were very popular and people wanted to prioritize that over Saturday mornings, for example, we could consider being open some bit on Saturday and some bit on Sunday. So this is to help gauge what that weekend contingency wants to see us do. All the people that I've heard from will be sent an email from me inviting them to participate in the survey. So everybody who's sent me a director mail already, after the survey is live, I'm going to be welcoming them to participate. And then the last question is getting to that question about weekday mornings. We want the library to be used. And we want a library to be used at times that people want to use it. I mean, that's true, accurate statement. But if more people want to use the library at a time that we're not open, but we could conceivably consider opening, you know, we might want to discuss adjusting those hours so that a big contingency of our population could have access to the library. And so this is to assess if we open from 9 to 10 on weekdays, how likely are they to come? And, you know, we could talk about the number of options given 3 versus 5 or add a neutral, you know, and what does the neutral really tell you anyway? And I was like, no, we don't want to add a neutral. The goal is to help make that choice, to communicate to the public, like, we can't do everything, but if we had to, and you had to, what would you recommend most? So that's the methodology behind the survey that we created and the questions that we asked. This by no means has to be the only survey that we end up doing, but it is, you know, we're going to push it forward in all of our communication channels. Jenny, you have a question or is that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. Are the only choices to have Saturday or Sunday hours being taken away?
No, there's no choices.
Oh.
So like just the questions are designed to help us get information about what we might want to decide. So if that was an option, if we decided, well, Sunday interest is so much, we need to think about adding those Sunday hours back in. What data might we have to figure out how to do that? And so I would say that these questions don't pigeonhole us at all into doing anything.
Oh, okay.
It's really to gather data about people's anticipated use and what they prefer.
Oh, okay, because I thought when you said about Sunday and Saturday, if they were adding Sunday hours, then we'd have to take Saturday hours.
I was using that as an example.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I think the idea that the library doesn't have the capacity to be everything to
Sure.
everyone with our current budget and our current staffing level is something to communicate in a way through the survey that helps them start, you know, sharing what their preference is.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, anything's on the table in terms of what the hours could be. It's only the first month, and we are seeing trends of people wanting Sunday hours back. I'm sure that's gonna happen, but as I told Bonnie, once we get to summer, those Sunday hours are not gonna be as needed or I think asked for, but there's gonna be more light out at night, and we're gonna see, I think, people wanting the library to be open in the evenings more. And so, I'm putting that little kernel out there just to say there's value in the data that we're getting now, but the usage of the library is seasonal. And so we may not have a full picture even after this pilot, but the more information we have from the community, the better.
So a couple of questions, Renee, does someone have to answer all questions to complete the survey?
We wanted them to, but you know, I would be open to changing that.
And did you discuss?
Your other
other
question.
comments box?
So we did, and so when someone finishes this survey, they're gonna get a pop-up that says, thank you for your survey. If you'd like to send additional feedback directly to our director, click here. And so we were trying to keep it really brief. 3 and 5 are like magic numbers in marketing, you know this already. So I was like, it needs to be 3 questions. And then if you added the extra comment box, I was like, oh, that's getting too long. And so what we're gonna do is, because there's gonna be people that have more feedback to give. And so that link is gonna be right there for them to fill out an additional form. So yes, to your question.
And are we accepting multiple submissions from the same individual?
Yeah, so I asked this exact question, and I don't know if Martha's still on the call, I know she's not feeling well, but
I am.
okay, cool, thank you. Do you want to talk about how we addressed this question that Bonnie's asking about multiple submissions and IP addresses and all of that stuff?
So we can track on the survey where the submissions are, what IP address the submissions are coming from. So we can see like, okay, this particular IP address submitted 45 submissions, perhaps. This is not relevant data. The trick though is that it has some limitations. Like for example, my husband and I could fill out the survey on our separate devices and it would say, okay, there are 2 entries coming from this IP address. So it's somewhat limited, but I mean, no survey is perfect as far as being able to limit that kind of behavior. But I think we've got some safeguards in place that should prevent rigging of the data.
Great. Any other questions about the survey?
We'll have it in both online and paper. Not everybody wants to scan a QR code. And that will be especially helpful to, for example, Eliza, whose caregivers who prefer, you know, just circling or filling in a box. You know, and ultimately, I think this is going to bring some really good data that can help inform good questions to ask about the hours and potentially, you know, changes if that's just, you know, decided at some point. It'll be available throughout the quarter, so that I can bring the data to you at the end of each month, but also I can bring it to you at the end of the whole 3 months. So at the June meeting, we'll have the final tabulations of the survey, but I'll also present it at the April meeting for the first month, so you can get a better look at what we're seeing. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Agenda item 13, library correspondence.
I think you all have seen all of these already, but I mostly included them for the public. I specifically wanted to include our history of library finances and the PPRT announcement. just looking for those opportunities to do a little educating to the community about how our library is funded and financed and how it's different from the schools and the park district and the village. And, you know, the village sits somewhere around 65–67% funded by tax dollars, where we're a lot more limited. So that's, those two. And then, oh, the Chronicle, I didn't pick up a copy of this when we reprinted it. They said that as of last Thursday, the new issue should include the retractions and the corrections and the apologies, but I haven't seen it. I'm told that this Chronicle is not really known about in terms of like awareness for papers, but
Any of you ever heard of it before? I've never heard of it before. Somebody said either.
I think it's to our benefit, really.
Photograph.
It's to our benefit, given the errors, and at the same time, I wanted them to make sure that they updated the incorrect statements and data that they shared, which they said that they would, and I just want to verify with the copy. So when I have it, I'll include it in your packets.
That brings us to item number 14. A board retreat on Saturday. So tomorrow, the strategic planning committee is meeting to finalize the agenda. I think Renee has provided all pre-read documents for the Google Drive.
It's been a big reading week for you all. I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for the excellent work you all do on the board.
And we are meeting at the Lake Bluff Rec Center in the community room there. So you walk in, past the check-in desk, go down the hallway to the left, the meeting room is on the right. We'll be set up like this, we'll be you. Projector, screen. And you'll get to meet another community member. For those of you who don't know, Carrie Wells. She's a consultant and just a great facilitator, a very active community member. So she's agreed to donate her time to lead our session tomorrow. And as well as Jamie Racklin, our municipal advisor. And you know, I really look forward to tapping into his expertise regarding library structure, funding, bonds, referendums, etc. You know, a lot of stuff that I don't think most of us know anything about. So that's the you know, the expectation is that we come out of the retreat with actionable items to guide us for the rest of the year as a board as to how we address the financial issues facing the library.
I also want to acknowledge the engagement committee who helped me facilitate some questions that you all are going to answer in little mini breakouts in the end part of the retreat about engagement with the community about these things. So I've got 3 or 4 questions I think we came up with at the end of the retreat that you all are going to help answer. And I think it's going to be that perfect like jump into the next steps after Jamie's what will be very informative presentation.
Any other business questions? Executive session? Not needed. Then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Thank you, trustee George. Now second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all.
For the merits.